hearing? Nadidinig nyo na?
Yes,
Am I heard?
Morning. Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, Madam
This
Chair.
is a public hearing by the Committee on Agriculture, Food, and Agrarian Reform, joined with the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies. I wish to call the meeting to order, and I wish to acknowledge the presence of our senators, Senator Nancy Binay and Senator Amy Marcos. And I will ask my committee secretary to read the list of resource persons who are present, okay? And so I recognize now my committee secretary. Those names who will not be read by the committee secretary, you can manifest your presence. You just take the floor, okay? So, Comsec, basahin mo na yung mga resource persons natin.
Yes, Madam Chair, good morning. From the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, we sent our invitation to Governor Jokno, but he's unavailable for today. But we have a set of high level officers from the Bangko Sentral, namely Ms. Lynn Javier, the Managing Director for Policy and Specialized Supervision Subsector, Ms. Ellen Joyce L. Suficiencia, the Director for Financial Inclusion Office, Strategic Communication and Advocacy, Ms. Maria Cynthia M. Sison, Deputy Director, Supervisory Policy and Research Department, Mr. Maynard Brian R. Mojica, Acting Deputy Director, Financial Inclusion Office, Strategic Communication and Advocacy, Mr. Jade Eric Redoblado, Bank Officer 5 from the Department of Economic Research of BSP, Ms. Geraldine M. Safra, Bank Officer 5, Department of Economic Research, also with BSP, Ms. Josephine A. David, Bank Officer 5, Department of Economic Research, BSP, Mr. Jaime M. Marariza Jr., Bank Officer 5, Department of Economic Research, BSP, Ms. May H. Valdez, also with BSP, and Attorney Asma A. Panda, Deputy General Counsel, Office of the General Counsel and Legal Services, BSP, and Attorney Katrina Anti Limbonhay Aldon, Acting Deputy Director, Office of the General Counsel and Legal Services, BSP. From the Monetary Board, also with Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, we have Dr. V. Bruce J. Tolentino, a private sector member of the board. He is with us together with DG Chuchi Fonasier, Deputy Governor, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Elmore Capule, Assistant Governor, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. And from the Department of Agrarian Reform, we sent an invitation to Secretary Castriciones, but he's unavailable. His representatives are Ms. Soledad Peralta, the Chief Agrarian Reform Program Officer, Department of Agrarian Reform, Director Baltasar Cruz, and Mr. Nerio Tierra. From the Department of Agriculture, Ms. Secretary Dar is unavailable, but his representative is Undersecretary Evelyn G. Lavinia, the Undersecretary for High Value Crops and Rural Credit. And from the Department of Finance, Secretary Carlos Dominguez is also unavailable, but his representatives are Ms. Irene Santa Ines, Department of Management Officer 5, Fiscal Policy and Planning Office, Department of Finance, Ms. Annabel Magno, Economist 3, Fiscal Policy and Planning Office, Director Robert Dominic Mariano from the Philippine Treasury, And from NEDA, we sent the invitation to Carl Kendrick Chua, the secretary is unavailable. But the representatives are Director Nieva Tinatural, the Director of Agriculture, Natural Resources and Environment Office of NEDA, Mr. Rory J. S. Dacumos, Chief Economic Development Specialist, NEDA, and Mr. Ralph Camelo E. Mariano, Senior Economic Development Specialist. From the Bankers Association of the Philippines, Mr. Jose Arnulfo Wick A. Veloso, we addressed the letter to him, and he is with us today with the following: Mr. Hans Sikat, the BAP Legislative Committee Chairperson, ING Managing Director and Country Manager, Mr. Benjamin P. Castillo, the Managing Director of the BAP, Mr. Arnel N. Almaden, the Associate Director of BAP. From the Rural Bankers Association of the Philippines, we sent the invitation to Ms. Elizabeth Carlos Timbol. Her representative is Milot Requillo, the Director in the Rural Bankers Association of the Philippines. From the Chamber of Thrift Banks, Mr. Cecilio Paul D. San Pedro, the President. He is unavailable, but the representative is Mr. Francisco Dizon, Second Vice President, with Susan Felix, the Executive Director. Then,
Galing ako dyan, kilala ko mga yan.
Good morning, ma'am.
I used to be a member of the Chamber of Thrift Bank. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am, I may continue. From the Bank Co-op, the Cooperative Banks Federation of the Philippines, the representative is Ms. Cristina Salvador, but we addressed the invitation to Mr. Prudencio Consolacion. Okay. From the Al-Amana Islamic Investment Bank of the Philippines, the chairperson is Mr. Alex Bangcola. Then from the Nueva Segovia Consortium of Cooperatives, our representative from the People's Organizations, Ms. Divina Kimi, the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer.
Welcome, Divina.
Then
best friend.
from the Microfinance Council of the Philippines, Executive Director, Mr. Alan Robert I. Sikat is with us, Madam Chair. Then from the Land Bank of the Philippines, the President and CEO, Ms. Cecilia Borromeo, is unavailable, but the representatives are Mr. Elcid Pangilinan, the Senior Vice President of the bank, and Strategy and Knowledge Management Group. Mr. Edgardo S. Luzano, the Assistant Vice President and Head of the Programs Management Department of Land Bank. Then we have Mr. Rafael Mariano from the Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas. He's with us, Madam Chair. And
welcome, Congressman Mariano, dating Congressman Mariano. Yeah.
From the Agricultural Credit Policy Council, Director Jocelyn Alma Badjola is with us, with Director Magdalena S. Kasuga, the Head Policy Research and Planning Agricultural Credit Policy. Then we have Attorney Jovi Bernabe from the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation. He is with us, Madam Chair. Then
that's all. The private sector. Private sector. Yung mga naglo-loan.
our only representatives for now, Madam Chair, are Ms. Divina Quime from the Nueva Ecija Consortium Cooperatives and Mr. Mariano. Then
meron dyan private sector. Kausap ko kanina si Mr. Amores.
Yes,
Javier Amores from PCCI, Philpudex.
Yes po, I'll continue po with the names. We have from the Department of Budget and Management, Madam Chair, represented by Ms. Maria Elisa Rivera, the Chief Budget and Management Specialist. We have from the National Statistician, from National Philippine Statistics Authority, Mr. Irma Aquino, Ms. Irma Aquino, the Chief Statistical Specialist from the PSA, Ms. Bernadette Malamban, Chief Statistical Specialist, Ms. Precious is Asinto from Senior Statistical Specialist, Livestock and Poultry Statistics Division, Ms. Abelia A. Regala, the Senior Statistical Specialist, Philippine from the PEC also, Ms. Judita C. Perido, a Senior Statistical Specialist also from the PSA. Then also Ms. Anita Breva and Mr. Raul Ludovice, both from PSA. Then from the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, represented by Dr. Maria Margarita de Gonzalez, Senior Research Fellow from PIDS. Then we have from the Cooperative Development Authority, the chairperson himself is with us, Madam Chair, Mr. Joseph B. Encabo. Then from the COA, Commission on Audit, we invited Chair Aguinaldo, but he's unavailable. The representatives are Ms. Marie Adelino, Cluster Director, Agricultural and Natural Resources, Ms. Elizabeth M. Savilla, Acting Director, Agricultural and Natural Resources, Ms. Radito G. Ching, Supervising Auditor, Agriculture and Natural Resources, Ms. Divina M. Telan, Officer in Charge, Supervising Auditor, NIA, Agricultural and Natural Resources, Mr. Haji Cesar V. Dumaran, Supervising Auditor, Agriculture and Natural Resources, Corporate Government Sector, Ms. Marita A. Yap, Supervising Auditor, also from COA, Madam Chair, Ms. Maria Linda C. Decena, OIC Supervising Auditor, Agriculture and Natural Resources, Ms. Amarilis Barbara A. Almazan, PCIC Kidancor, Agriculture and Natural Resources, Corporate Government Sector, COA, Ms. Corazon S. Rocas, Acting Assistant Director, also from COA, Attorney Bianca Cecilia Ladislao, Attorney 5, Section Chief, Agriculture, Environment, Natural, National Government Sector, Ms. Aurora R. Karamat, Ms. Cecilia G. Raneses, Attorney Maria Joana Diana P. Quijano, Attorney Christine S. Go, also all from the COA, also Madam Chair. Then from the Philippine Guarantee Corporation, the representatives are Attorney Emmanuel R. Torres, Senior Vice President, Head Agriculture Guarantee Group, Mr. Teresito Cayo A. Botardo, the Vice President, Head Agricultural Business Development Department. Then from the TESDA, Madam Chair, Ms. Maria Linda A. Andrade, Supervising TESDA Specialist, Planning Office. From the Agricultural Training Institute, represented by Ms. Michelle M. De Leon, Project Evaluation Officer, Agricultural Training Institute. Then from the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, represented by Mr. Roberto C. Amores, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry Director, Ms. Donna Angulo, Manager, Philippine PCCI, Dr. William S. Ko, Chairperson, William and Company Philippines Incorporated. That's all,
Okay.
Madam Chair. That's all, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sino yung nasa high value crop? Iho? Si ano?
Si
Yung
Evelyn,
head.
ma'am. Evelyn.
Lavinia? Oo.
Opo.
Mr. Amores, siya yung head ng high value crop. So yung
Yeah.
mga complaint mo doon sa mga crops mo, siya ang pupuntahan mo.
Yeah.
Responsibility niya yun.
Magkakilala po
Nasaan
kami
si Evelyn? Lavinia?
Evelyn.
Nasaan si Evelyn? Nandiyan ba? O Iha, ayun no, nagko-complain yung mga exporter dun sa mga high value crop mo. So pag-igihin nyo na yung, alam mo, ang rule sa budget, if you have a budget of 1 billion, you spend 500 million for overhead, and the 500 million you make programs to improve yung inyong kasi meron kang high value crop program. Ano ba yung ginagawa ng high value crop program? Ako, ayoko na lang magko-comment sa inyo. Kaya minsan, para matulungan yung inyong programa, ako out of my entitlement as a senator, gumagawa ako ng programa para ibigay sa inyo, para may accomplishment kayo, para kasi nagkukulang kayo sa programa nyo. Sana pag binibigay ko sa inyo, gagawin nyo kasi magagalit talaga ako pag pati yung binigay ko sa inyo, hindi nyo pa rin gagawin. Katulad nung Philippine Carabao Center, binigyan ko yun para magtayo ng mga dairy projects sa mga iba-ibang lugar sa Pilipinas dahil hindi ko ma-imagine that after they have existed for 25 years, 1% of demand ang kanilang production. Hindi ko ma-imagine yun. Kung ako ang naando sa department na yun for 25 years at 1% ng demand na gawa ko, magpapakamatay na ako. Hindi ko na talaga ma-accept yun. Kung saan nila dinala pera, hindi pa nila gagawin yung pinagagawa ko sa kanila. Pina-audit ko yun. Pinakuha ko yun. Pera ko yun eh. Ako nag-provide ng funds doon, hindi nga ako humingi sa kanila eh. Kaya yung ikaw, binigyan kita ng funds for high value crop, gamitin mo yun. Para magtayo ng mga project on high value crop, magpapa-audit ako. Pag sa akin nanggaling ang pera, pa-audit ko. Hindi nyo dapat pinakikialaman yun. Kung saan ko sinabi na dadalhin nyo, doon nyo dadalhin. Kasi yun ang pagkukulang nyo. Don't try me. Ako, I never ask money from DA. But if nakikita ko kayo nagkukulang, ako na nagbibigay ng project. Kaya pagbigay ko project, better follow what I want to do out of those projects. Kasi mag-aaway talaga tayo. Yun lang. Kaya, Mr. Amores, pag may problema ka kay high value crop, pumunta ka kay
Yeah,
Yusek Lavinia. Oo.
we have
Kasi
discussed already with
meron
Yusek
talaga
Lavinia.
tayong high value crop program sa DA. Marami ang program natin dyan. Merong National Rice Program in addition to the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund. Ang National Rice Program natin, 15 billion a year. 15.5 billion a year. Yung RCEP, 10 billion lang yun eh. Oh. So, total between the two of them, 25.5 billion. Oh. Tapos meron tayong National Corn Program, National High Value Crop Program, National Organic Program, Fisheries Program, and then yung livestock program. Lahat yan, may program yan eh. Oh. So, dapat kahit pa paano may project about those program to develop agriculture. Kaya ako binibida lang sa inyo para alam nyo. Baka akala nyo walang programa ang DA. Meron silang programa. Pag hindi nagagawa programa, there must be something wrong with the agency. Di ba? Okay. And ang nais ko rin comment, hindi dumating ang DAR. The biggest problem in this hearing is DAR. Di ba? Kasi kaya hindi makapagpa-loan ang 10% of the loanable amounts of banks would be for Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries. That is the AGRA. Agri is for agriculture, AGRA is for the land reform beneficiaries. Okay lang yung agriculture. I think sabi nila average is 9% a year. But I think these latest years, mga 12 to 13 na. Nung una siguro mababa. Oo. And then nag-order na ang merong order ang tawag dito, ang BSP, yung tinatawag nilang BSP Circular number 1111 series of 2021 issued in March 3, 2021 na binroaden na nila what are yung products na pwedeng pagdalhan ng bangko with their loanable amounts para hindi sila marami masyadong nagbabayad sila ng penalty. Oo. Binroaden na yan. They have this. Ang dami-dami na nilang isinali para maka-avail ng Agri-Agra law. So, malaking bagay yon. So, I guess these loans to agriculture mas lalaki in the future. But ang problema natin ay yung Agra. Kaya sana naandito yung head ng DAR para malaman niya that there's something wrong with DAR. Bakit hindi makabaro yung mga land reform beneficiary? What is wrong with the system? Yun ang pag-uusapan natin kasi 1% out of 10% ang availment, di ba? Hindi bali yung agriculture, it's around, I think now it's 12% out of 15%. Oo. Pero yung DAR, yung Agrarian Reform, Agra, is 1% out of 10%. Kaya tayo naghihiring ngayon to make the necessary amendment para mas maganda ang performance ng Agri-Agra law. So this public hearing of the Committee on Agriculture and Food and Agrarian Reform, joined with the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions and Currency, was called pursuant to 7 Senate Bill as follows. Senate Bill number 10338 filed by Senator Marcos, 1336 filed by Senator Revilla Jr., 1352 filed by Senator Lapid, 1361 filed by Senator Angara, 1585 filed by Senator Villar, 1740 by Senator Poe, 1924 by Senator Go, and Senate Resolution number 19 also by Senator Marcos, which seeks to look into the accrued total amount administration and proper disbursement of the Agricultural Guarantee Fund or AGFP, also provided for in the Agri-Agra law, taking into consideration also House Bill number 6134, passed an act mandating banking institutions to strengthen the financing system for agricultural fisheries and rural development in the Philippines. Amendments to RA 10000 or the Agri-Agra Reform Credit Act of 2009. Okay? So, yun po ang pag-uusapan natin today. On the average, banks pay around 2 billion in penalties every year annually due to the non-compliance with the mandated quotas under the Republic Act 10000 or Agri-Agra Credit Act of 2009. In a recent statement given by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the banks have extended a total of 713 billion in Agra-Agra credit as of December 2020, but still this is not in compliance with the mandatory Agri-Agra credit. Of the total loans extended by banks, 642 billion is accounted for by agricultural credit, which is only 9% of the 15%. And while the Agrarian Reform Credit extended by banks to date amounts to 71 billion, a mere 1% compliance vis-a-vis the 10% requirement under the Agri-Agra law. So nakita natin na malaki ang problema ng Agra. Accordingly, this was due to long processing time-related issues, securities accreditation, borrowers' difficulty in securing agrarian reform credits, limited availability of Agri-Agra compliant debt papers, and lack of visible bankable agricultural products, among others. Except for cooperative banks and rural banks, banks see the Agri-Agra sector as a high risk and are considered high cost to banks. Total fund has reached 10.3 billion in penalties by end of 2020, and 45% goes to the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation to give free insurance to our farmers. Another 45% goes to the Agricultural Guarantee Fund pool managed by the Land Bank of the Philippines, while the remaining 10% to BSP to cover administrative costs. So according to the resolution of Senator Amy Marcos, they want an audit of this 45% to the Agricultural Guarantee Fund pool. Tama ba yun, Amy? Yun ang pina-audit mo? Kung saan
Yes,
pumunta?
audit mo kasi hindi updated yung pagka-report at saka yung administration, ang sinasabi, wala naman agricultural or farming sector na kinokonsulta dyan, puro sa bankers. So there's no presence whatsoever in decision-making of the agricultural sector.
So I guess the head of that guarantee fund is here. So he will be listening what is the complaint with the fund. Tayo kasi lang alam natin yung Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation. Ang nagtataka lang ako, ang budget nila ay 3.5 billion, di ba? 45% of 10.3 billion is not 3.5 billion, di ba?
That's why the numbers don't match
Kaya I'm curious why 3.5 billion, kasi kung 45% of 10, it's 4.5 billion, di ba?
That's right po.
Humihingi pa sila sa bayanihan ng extra at saka do sa ASF ng extra. Dahil sila magbabayad nung kaling, di ba? Ito pala, 45% nito pumupunta sa kanila. Nire-report lang nila is 3.5 billion, di ba?
That's correct po, and it's usually the GAA allotment. It's not this one. So we'd like to look into
Ay, iba
this
ba
one.
yun? Kala ko dito nang gagaling yon. Is that different from
Nalilito
this?
nga kami kaya gusto namin sit down. Unang-una yung audit report. Ikalawa, sino nagmamanage nito? Kasi palipat-lipat na po siya. At ang hinala nila, walang taga-agri sector or farmer na may kinalaman sa pagdispensa niyan.
Okay. So the House of Representatives recommends a version that will allow banks to merge loan allocation to the farming sector without distinction whether it is Agri or Agra. This aims to improve banks' compliance to their mandate to set aside the 25% loanable funds to farmers and fisher folks, the 10 plus the 15. This is to overhaul the law and address the root causes of the difficulties faced by the agricultural and fishery sectors and towards rural development. Okay, that's the version of the House. And then the BSP has released circular, I was saying this one, 111, signed on March 3, 2021, which expanded the eligible Agri-Agra loans to include those for activities related to agricultural value chain from farming, fishing, as well as other process involved in converting agri-raw materials to the consumption form will be considered Agri-Agra compliant. This means processing. This means even loans to businesses related to input production, farm and fishery operation and management, equipment and supplies manufacturing, which is very relevant now because we are buying a lot of machineries for the farmers nowadays, both the coconut farmers and the rice farmers. And the sugar farmers na hindi naman nila ginagawa. Sumulat kami nung SIDA para magbigay na equipment para sa sugar farmers, hindi naman nila ginawa. Oo. Kaya we are going to amend pa yung SIDA kung ano problema noon. And food processing, trading, and retailing will also be qualified as compliance with the Agri-Agra law. Pwede na supermarket, pati retailing, di ba? Okay?
Yeah. I was going, just as an idea po, palibasa ibang-iba naman yung Agri at yung Agra. Instead of loosening the whole setup, just as an idea, kausap ko rin yung ibang congressman, hiwalayin na yung Agra, ibahin na lang siya.
Or pagsamahin na yung 25 at pwede na rin sa Agri yon. Kasi yung Agri, actually, Agri din yun eh.
Iba naman. Iba naman kasi problema ng Agra eh.
Oh. So, anyway, loans to surviving, the central bank also expanded its definition for agrarian reform beneficiaries to include communities and integrated development made up of farmers that were granted land or benefited from redistributed land through previous agrarian reform programs. Loans to surviving family members in case initial beneficiary die or already incapable to manage awarded land are also included in the revised measure. Moreover, bonds issued by banks whose proceeds will finance lending to agrarian reform beneficiaries will also be counted as part of the agrarian reform credit data. My take is that we have to address the difficulty of agrarian reform beneficiaries to comply with the bankability requirements. Okay. And in addition, I want to mention for the benefit of Land Bank, can you please tell it to Cecil and also to DBP? I went to Indonesia and meron silang government bank doon. The largest bank in Indonesia is a government bank. They call it BRI Bank, and their portfolio is 85% small and micro. O nakaya nila and very profitable. So I guess we can ask DBP and Land Bank to go to Indonesia and research doon sa BRI Bank para gamitin nating model yon, baka sakali may maituro sa atin, especially in the amendment of this Agri-Agra law. Baka meron silang special, ano tawag doon, strategy na magagamit natin para sa Agri-Agra law. So with that, we're ready to hear from our senators and our resource persons. Okay? So first of all, I want to give the floor to our two senators if they want. Who will go first?
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Okay.
no more po. We can proceed with the resource person.
How about Senator Marcos?
Yes, very quickly lang po. We would like to look into the Agricultural Guarantee Fund pool as mentioned earlier. Secondly, we'd also like to be updated on the status of the loans that are provided under Agri-Agra. Thirdly, as mentioned earlier, I think that we should have a different mindset with Agri-Agra now, compounding the problem with two completely different sets of issues. Yung Agri sana ihiwalay na natin sa Agra pagkat alam natin na yung Agra nasa direksyon tayo ng Bayanihan 2 for the condonation of the penalties on interest unpaid. And finally, I would like more information regarding the 10-year sunset provision. If this, in fact, given the situation with COVID, will guarantee that we will be able to manage the mandatory credit quotas. Kung sapat na yung 10 years o hihingi na rin tayo ng sunset provision, habaan na po natin. Thank you.
In that connection, I wish to inform everybody that there is a project sa DAR. Ang tawag nito ay split program. This is
Opo.
being financed by World Bank. Gusto nila yung collective CLOA is-split to individual CLOA. Kasi ang problema, kaya hindi makautang yung mga land reform beneficiary, wala silang collateral kasi yung kanilang CLOA collective CLOA. Oo. And then, ang failure din ng DAR, hindi sila nagtayo ng mga cooperative dun sa may mga collective CLOA. Sana kung may cooperative that can serve as yun ang magiging debtor or siyang mag-a-apply ng loan kasi ang cooperative are entitled to apply loan from banks. Kaya lang, napansin namin in our studies, kung sino pa yung mga land reform beneficiaries, sila pa yung walang cooperative. Maigi pa yung mga rice farmers, ang daming cooperative. Ang ating program, pag mamimigay ka ng machinery, you cannot give it to individuals. You have to give it to cooperatives kasi mahal yung machinery, they will have to share it, di ba? So dapat may cooperative na tatanggap ng mga libreng machinery from our rice program and our coconut program and our sugar program. Na-discover namin kung sino pa yung land reform beneficiary, sila yung walang cooperative. Maigi pa yung mga other farmers na hindi land reform beneficiary, may cooperative sila. Pero yung mga land reform beneficiary, nag-fail ang DAR to create cooperatives for them. So paano mo sila tutulungan? Mahirap kasi tumulong sa individual, mas madaling pagbigyan yung mga cooperative, di ba? So yun din ang isang problema ng land reform. Kaya sana gusto ko yung naandito sana si Secretary Castaciones kasi talagang ang may problema ay yung Agra. Oo.
Tama.
Si Agri. Oo, mas malaki problema ng Agra. So with that, I wish now to call our resource person. Can I ask my committee chair, committee secretary to call them one by order of their how they came in? We recognize now the committee secretary.
Madam Chair.
Sino yung unang dumating? Sige
Sir,
na.
Madam Chair, there's a proposed order of speaking
Okay.
order.
Okay.
We start with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Madam Chair, and we will make a presentation.
Okay. We recognize now the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.
Villar. We extend our sincere appreciation to the Senate for giving the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas the opportunity to share its insights and recommendation on the various Senate bills proposing to amend Republic Act 10,000. The amendment of RA 10,000 is a priority measure of the BSP and of the economic managers for the 18th Congress. The BSP fully supports the objectives driving the various Agri-Agra bills, which seek to strengthen rural development through holistic approaches that consider the broad context for agricultural financing and rural community development, and improve the welfare and economic prospects of agricultural workers, their enterprises, as well as their households, and address the key challenges faced by the agricultural sector in obtaining access to financing. Of the various Senate bills that have been filed aimed at amending RA 10,000, the BSP respectfully urges the Senate to closely consider and adopt the provisions of House Bill 6134, which has been filed also in the Senate as Senate Bill 1352. House Bill
No, we
6134.
I just want to inform you, we never copied the House bill. We form our own Senate bill.
We
So don't expect us to copy. I have read it. I hindi ko masyadong gusto yung House bill. So you better tell me how do you solve the problem, and we will make our own version of the bill.
Yes, ma'am, we understand. We stress three key elements. The first element is to enhance access by rural communities to private sector financing by broadening attention to the whole agricultural value chain instead of just pure production.
Oh.
Also, we stress creating the Agribusiness Management Capacity and Institution Building Fund, or the special fund, that focuses on overcoming the key constraint to the creditworthiness of rural and agricultural borrowers.
What is the credit constraint?
The credit constraint is creditworthiness of the borrowers. It is not the money. It is the capability of the potential borrowers in handling and usefully making good use of the
How do
funds
they
that they
become
receive.
how do they become credit worthy? Ano
The
yung
focus,
program na dapat gawin doon?
the focus of the special fund is to finance organizational, capacity, and institution building programs and activities for the benefit of rural
Di
and
ba
agricultural
cooperatives and
fisheries
training
borrowers.
yan?
Kasama
Di
na rin
ba
po ang cooperatives.
hindi ba cooperative yan at saka training?
Yes, ma'am.
Yung institutional building na yan. Kasi alam mo, ako, in my experience as a legislator, I never say a broad and assign it to a committee. That's the best way na hindi mai-implement yung program. Ang experience ko as a legislator, pipili ka ng agency na mag-i-implement ng program at ilalagay mo sa batas para pag hindi niya ginawa, he is liable for that according to the law. So pag cooperative, I think we'll assign it to CDA, and pag training, it's TESDA and ATI, di ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Ba't tayo
Kasama na ho
create
sila.
ng committee? That is just, parang sa akin, kaya hindi ko masyadong gusto, hindi maliwanag. Magkikreate ka ng committee, tapos sila pa mag-i-implement. Kung hindi nila implement, ba't hindi mo na lang i-assign sa CDA yung cooperative at training sa TESDA and ATI? Mas maliwanag pa at ibigay mo kung magkano budget a year para sila na responsible doon. Pag hindi nila ginawa yun, i-demanda natin because that is illegal. Diba? Kasi yun ako kasi gusto ko specific kasi ang problema namin pag nag-o-oversight kami, pag hindi specific, hindi namin malaman kung saan hahanapin yung pera. Pag tuturo-turuan kami. Oo. Kaya hindi ko masyadong gusto yung House version because gano'n na naman ka-vague. Huwag tayong maging vague. Be specific tayo para pag hindi ginawa, alam natin kung sino hindi gumawa. Oo, kasi katulad nung pagkakamali ko sa SIDA law, kaya hindi na-implement yon, vague kung sino gagawa eh. Pero yung RCEP at itong COCO bill, walang vague dito. Sinabi na namin magkano ang pera, kasi sino gagawa. Para pag hindi niya ginawa, alam niya na siya may kasalanan. Oo. Kasi pag inassign mo sa isang committee o sa isang department, nawawala eh. Pinagtuturo-turuan ka eh. Kaya yun ang request ko sa inyo, be specific tayo dito para makita na dati na maganda yung implementation. Kasi from my experience, pag ganon, mas maganda ang implementation. Kasi they feel responsible mahahanap mo sila Like for example, yung PhilMec at PhilRice, every week may pinupuntahan silang probinsya, pinadadala nila sa akin yung picture kasama nung kanilang mga equipment na pinamimigay nila. Banti mo kung every week may isang probinsya, there are 52 provinces in the Philippines, and there are 80 provinces in the Philippines, there are 52 weeks in a year. O di at least sigurado ka na may 52 provinces na pinuntahan. Baka nga dalawang probinsya pa isang buwan. O yung ganun ba? So yun lang ang hiling ko sa inyo. If you're going to recommend, be specific. Huwag tayong mag-create ng committee tapos pabayaan natin committee na yun. Mahirap yun. Mahirap hanapin yun sa oversight kasi kami mag-o-oversight So we want specific agency ng government para pag hindi na i-implement siya ang hahanapin namin. Kasi mahirap mag-oversight sa gobyerno.
We understand, Madam Senator. In fact,
So okay lang sa akin. I agree with you that creditworthiness, so there should be institutional building, there should be training. But ayokong dalhin sa committee. Ibigay niyo sa akin kung anong agency ng government ang gagawa noon. At doon ibibigay ang budget para may somebody responsible. Mahirap yung committee. Pagtuturo-turuan na naman kami dyan.
yes, ma'am. If I may continue, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you. Maraming salamat po. The special fund is proposed to be set up to finance capacity building initiatives for farmers, agrarian reform beneficiaries, and their enterprises. Indeed, our history is that supply-side mandatory financing ought to be complemented by demand-side interventions. The capacity building programs and activities will equip farmers with a range of managerial and technical competencies, including financial and digital literacy and business management, so that they can use their borrowed funds as well as possible. Thus, their creditworthiness and bankability will be improved. It is proposed that the contributions by banks to the special fund be considered as compliance with the mandatory credit requirement. May I add that the capacity building interventions envisioned under the amendment will complement the important impacts of the national ID system now being rapidly rolled out throughout the country. The national ID will fulfill the very basic KYC, know your customer requirement for financial inclusion. The proposed amendments will create a public-private council that will establish the parameters as well as monitor the operations of the special fund. As the good senator has recommended, we need to ensure that this council is able to monitor and ensure that the funds are spent properly. The council is responsible for ensuring the effective allocation of the funds and implementation of the finance programs based on
When
the
you talk of the fund, you're talking about yung binabayad ng mga bangko as is that the fund you're talking about yung for non-compliance?
Yes, ma'am. The
Okay.
non-compliance fees that are collected from the banks. We stress that the council is proposed to be broadly represented by different sectoral representatives to ensure benefit from concerned and collective insights and efforts of both government and the private sector, as well as representatives of the beneficiaries.
So
Dear
what do you
senators,
propose na kung sino member ng council? Kasi ilalagay natin sa batas yan.
Opo, may listahan po na
Ito ba?
nakapropose, which include the Bankers Association of the Philippines, the Thrift Bankers, the Rural Bankers, and of course the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Agrarian Reform.
And then,
I do not have the full
Walang-
list in front of me. Madam
can
Chairman.
you give me the list? Kasi we
Yes.
usually, if we will create a council to oversight we give a list. We indicate that in the law. O
Yes,
para maliwanag, hindi yung binabago, 'di ba? At saka yung i-oversight yung pera, specific yung pera. Ilang percent 'yon ng ano, ganon. Ilang percent ang cooperative, yung institutional building, ilang percent yung training, ilang percent yung ganon. Para, at ano ang budget ng council. Oo, para alam natin kung sa beginning pa lang, saan pupunta ang pera natin.
That sounds like a
If there is
useful
no
proposal, madam.
definite money, we can do it in percentage. Di ba? Para kung nagbabago yung definite amount, kasi this is just parang ano nila to yung pag hindi nila na-fulfill yung requirement, they have to pay penalties. So nag-iiba ito, parang tariff, nag-iiba rin. So we do percentage, di ba? Para
That's correct.
nakalagay doon, para hindi binabago, walang favoritism, nakalagay sa batas kung ilan ang matatanggap mo and then you account for that, di ba?
Yes, ma'am. We will have more details in the presentation that will immediately
Yeah, when I
follow
make kasi
the statement.
amendment to a law, I make it very detailed. Para, kasi alam mo, ang problem namin, which is the complaint of senators, yung aming mga legislation, pag ginawa ang IRR, nababago ang spirit of the law. Kung ano gusto nung gumagawa ng IRR, yun ilalagay niya kahit hindi yun ang provision of the law. So we want our law to be the IRR itself. Oo, walang babaguhin. Oo. Kasi pag pinagawa mo IRR sa department, binabago niya yung spirit of the law according to his wishes. Hindi naman yun ang pinasa ng Congress. Oo. Kaya I want you to be very specific para walang babaguhin ng IRR. Kasi binabago nila In fact, that nagpi-privilege speech ang mga senators na ganun ang ginagawa. Gagawin mo vegan law mo, tapos yung IRR gagawin, tapos yung IRR doesn't follow the spirit of the law. So ngayon, yung law, IRR na yun. Wala nang babaguhin. Di ba? Di ba tama yun?
Opo.
That is
In fact,
fair, di ba? Mas fair yung ganon, di ba? Ito ipinasa namin, ito susundin, di ba? Oo.
Opo.
Madam Chair,
Papasalamat po kami sa guidance ninyo, Madam Senator. At in fact, yung example ninyo sa inyong mga activities tulad ng SIPAG has proven to be an inspiration to some of the training that we are proposing.
Yeah.
So if you,
It's
with your
not
indulgence-
SIPAG. We are one of the farm school. There are 2,000 farm schools all over the Philippines created by the Farm Tourism Law, which mandated the creation of the farm schools. And then yung farm school, doon sa mga lokong Pinas, nilagyan ko ng budget ang TESDA para bayaran niya yung mga farm school for sponsoring the training of farmer. Ganito din mangyayari dito. Yung training nila, gagawin sa farm school. And then babayaran ng TESDA ang kanilang bayad doon sa farm school. Para naman parang tuition. Ang TESDA ang magbabayad. Tapos yung ATI ang mag-approve na module. So halimbawa, meron kayong module for financing, ibibigay niyo sa ATI, tapos i-approve nila module, tapos yun na ituturo sa farm school. Oo, mas definite, di ba? So ang siguro
klaro.
maibibigay sa amin ng mga bangko, yung module na gusto nila, and then ituturo sa farm school, babayaran ng test and tuition ng mga estudyante mag-aaral sa farm school. So walang complaint ng farmer kasi they are able to study libre. TESDA nagbabayad. Oo. Kasi lahat ng batas namin ginagawa, merong budget ang TESDA para bayaran nila ang tuition ng lahat na mag-aaral sa farm school. Para tapos natutulungan pa natin yung farm school dahil that's additional income of the farmers. Yung matatalinong farmers, nagtatayo sila ng farm school, nagtuturo sila. And if you teach 25 students a month, you earn 100,000 from TESDA. O di kung 12 months ka, 1.2 million. Aba, yumayaman ng ating mga farmers, which is what we want to happen, na hindi mahihirap yung farmer. Hindi sila ganun kayaman, pero hindi sila mahihirap. At saka may dignity para yung mga bata na anak ng mga farmers, pumunta sila sa farming kasi matatanda na yung farmers natin, wala na magpa-farmer. Kahit isa man lang anak ng farmer na nag-aral din ng college kasi nagbigay din ako ng scholarship para sila makapag-aral ng college sa aking batas, mag-farmer sila. At ang maganda, pag ikaw mechanized, hindi mahihiya ang bata na mag-farmer kasi mag-ooperate siya ng machine. Hindi siya magtatanim with his hands. Di ba? Mas attractive sa mga bata. We have to attract the youth kasi matatanda na yung farmer natin.
At kung nakadaan na ho sa farm school, it's part of the qualification process for
Yeah.
getting a loan.
Yeah. And they have many
Ayun,
training in farm school. Hindi lang isang training. Meron sa finance, meron sa marketing, meron sa production, mechanization. Marami silang module sa TESDA that you can teach. So kami po, dahil ako senador, hindi po ako accredited ng TESDA. Ito po CSR ng company namin. Oo. Kasi nakakaya, baka sabihin nila, ginawa ko to para ma-accredit yung farm school ko. But anyway, ganun ang concept. Kaya lang po ako nagtayo ng farm school that will serve as a model for other farm school to follow. Oo, kasi tatanungin nila, how do you build a farm school? O di pumunta ka sa farm school namin na maintindihan mo how do you build a farm school. Di ba? Something like that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, with your indulgence, ma'am, and the members of the committee, the BSP would like to make a brief presentation on the more technical aspects
Yeah.
of
yeah.
our views. And this will be delivered by Managing Director Lynn Javier. Maraming salamat po.
Marami pong salamat sa inyo.
Madam Chair,
Oo, sige.
pwede pa ba mag-comment?
Yes, yes. Oo.
Bobby Amores
Sino to?
po.
Okay,
Bobby Amores, yeah. Anyway, that was a good presentation of Director Bruce. Anyway, ang sinasabi ko, ang problema po natin, more than 80 to 90% ng MSME at saka itong mga farmer stakeholders, hindi po sila qualified na makautang. Hindi sila qualified makautang dahil sa kanilang mga karanasan at sa kanilang mga pagkalugi sa pagsasaka at saka sa kanilang operations as an SME. Now, I have been trying to talk to, and then ang mga bangko naman hindi makapagpautang because of their fiduciary responsibility. It's a chicken and egg po. Now, total nagbabayad po ng penalty yung bangko. Hindi ba pwede itong penalty mailagay na sa isang credit pool talaga, tapos maibigay natin sa mga rural bank as disbursing units? Kasi wala pong capability ang mga commercial bank to go retail type of lending. So itong mga rural bank po, pwede naman sila maging conduit to
May I answer that?
makapagpahiram.
May
Yes,
I answer
ma'am.
that? In all
Yes,
the
ma'am.
laws that I passed, I gave money to DBP and Land Bank. Hindi naman sila ang magre-retail Bibigay nila yun sa rural bank at saka doon sa maliliit na bangko. Magbibigay lang sila. Minsan nga 2% lang ang patong nila. Talagang kasi yung mga binigay namin pera sa kanila, ano na yon? Yung bigay yun part of the budget. So hindi na nila binabayaran sa gobyerno yon. Kaya parang
Pero-
sila, outlet lang sila and they get 2% service fee lang. Tapos pinauutang na nila sa co-op, sa rural bank, sa thrift bank, kung sino man may gusto na bangko na sila ang mag-retail. And I think that is very reasonable na ipapatong sa'yo 2%. Oo.
Wala, mura lang po yun. Pero yung
Bakit ayaw niyo noon?
ma-operationalize.
Bakit ayaw
Hindi,
nyo noon na umutang kayo? Kasi mahirap yung ibibigay Mahirap
Hindi,
yung ibibigay kung hindi government bank. Kasi bawal yun
Hindi, utang po ito, hindi to dole out. Utang. Utang po.
Pwede naman silang umutang sa Land Bank at DBP.
Hindi, yung qualification po ng borrower. Yun lang ang
Ang
problema.
borrower
Kasi-
is rural bank, ang borrower is cooperative, ang borrower is strip bank. Ano problema? No? Yung malilit na bangko, sila magbabaro. May 2% lang patong ang DBP at Land Bank. Kasi alam mo, gusto namin kasi idadaan sa government bank. Kasi pag dinaan mo sa ano, yung ang dami na nating loans na dinaan natin sa department, nawala. Nawala.
Correct.
Kasi walang responsibility. Unlike if it's a bank, kontrolado sila ng ino-audit sila ng central bank, hindi sila pwedeng paloko-loko. Oo.
Hindi to operate.
Katulad nung kaya ayaw namin yan, bibigay sa private coming from government. Katulad nung ba yon, yung AGFP, Agricultural Competitiveness Enhancement Fund. Nung ibinigay yon sa DA, 8 billion ang nawala. Walang nagbayad. Kaya nung mag-expire yon, hiniling ng mga senator na ibigay na lang sa Land Bank at DBP at doon umutang yung mga small banks. Tapos, malit lang ang patong ni service charge lang ang Land Bank at DBP because they are government bank. They don't really have to make money out of our farmers. Oo. So, with that, nagbayad. Kasi noon 8 billion nawala sa AGFP. 8 billion ang nawala doon. Ang pera 13 billion, nawala ang 8 billion. Walang nagbayad. Ang nagbayad yata 7%. Oo. Kasi pag tapos ang sabi nila, kaya daw sila hindi nagbayad, naglagay daw sila. Naglagay sila ng 30%. Bakit sila magbabayad? Parang yun na interest nila. How will you answer that? Kaya gusto namin idadaan sa bangko because ang bangko sinusupervise ng central bank. Hindi sila paloko-loko. Pwedeng magkamali sila in terms of risk, but hindi pwede na yung uutang. Imagine yung AGFP, ang lowest loan na binigay nila 15 million, ang highest loan 100 million. Pag Agriculture Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, 15 million to 100 million, sino humiram nun? Yung bang farmer hihiram ng 15 million to 100 million? 'Di ba? So, yun ang nangyari sa AGFP. Kasi ako ang sumulat ng amendment ng AGFP. Kaya alam na alam ko. At talagang hindi ko maipapasa sa Senado kung hindi ako magre-reform kasi nakaabang na nun si Senator Osmeña, galit na galit do sa AGFP. Nawala 8 bilyon eh. So, mahirap yung gano'n na ididiretso mo sa isang private bank, miski bangko pa yun. So, gusto natin ibibigay sa government bank, tapos yung mga private bank, they avail from the government bank, lang naman 2% service charge eh. Kasi ang pera nila hindi naman from depositors eh. They are money from the budget of the national government. So, no cost to them. They are just facilitating so it will be given to rightful people.
My comment lang talaga, ma'am. Madami kasing hindi qualified na maliliit na farmer at saka
may guarantee fund tayo eh. Meron kaya di ba ito ang 45% na to nasa Philippine Guarantee. Yun nga eh. Yun ang use ng fund na yun eh, to guarantee yung mga hindi magandang risk eh. Kaya tayo may guarantee fund eh. Para yung mga risky na pauutangin, i-cover ng guarantee fund to protect the banking institutions or those that will lend. Pero may pondo tayo to guarantee. Sila magbabayad pag hindi nagbayad. Para naman protected din yung nagpapautang. Hindi kasi natin pwede na kung pautang yan ng gobyerno, pababayaan lang natin. Hindi baling walang interest, mababa interest, or pero kailangan magbabayad. Kasi pag inalaw mo na hindi magbabayad, puro kalokohan na lang yan. Walang mangyayari dyan. Dapat talaga tuturuan natin, kahit sila mahirap, that bakit yung Bank na Indonesia, profitable sila, 85% small and micro. Huwag natin sasabihin na yung mga maliliit hindi magbabayad. Kailangan turuan natin silang magbayad. Kaya nga tama rin to sinasabi na institutional building. That we have to build cooperatives and we have to train them how to manage their money, di ba? Ito yung sinasabi ng central bank. Oh.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, siguro following yung train of thought ni Mr. Amores, siguro aside from dun sa capacity building ng mga cooperatives and the like, siguro dapat meron din yung programa kung paano rin yung individual farmers can be magkakaroon din sila ng credit worthiness. Baka yung standards for them should be a little bit lower kasi nga una-una mahirap naman din ho talaga sila. Wala talagang regular banks that would give loans to them. So kailangan ho siguro baka yung criteria to be able to avail of the funds, baka dapat medyo babaan din natin yung standards.
Kaya
And at
nga
the
may
same time,
guarantee fund eh. Kasi yung guarantee fund, kahit na hindi ka credit worthy, bibigyan ka na lang ng guarantee. Diba? Para hindi matakot yung bangko. Diba?
yes, ma'am.
Kaya nga may Philippine Guarantee Fund tayo eh. Oo.
And then at the same time, dapat tinuturuan din natin yung mga farmers natin
Yeah,
na may
capacity
obligasyon pa rin
building.
silang
Oo.
bayaran itong utang na ito.
Just
In
to cite
fact,
the information.
yung amended AGFP, yung Agriculture Competitiveness Enhancement Fund na ang pera nasa DBP at Land Bank, iyon, nilagyan namin ng limit yon. For individual farmers, 1 million and below. And then for cooperative, 5 million and below. Oh, nilagyan na nga namin ng reasonable amount para yung malalaki hindi na mangungutang doon, yung maliliit lang, di ba? Kasi ang nangyayari, palakasan eh. Kahit na hindi entitled doon sa utang eh, doon pumupunta eh. Oh, so nilagyan namin yon 1 million and below individual farmers, tapos 5 million and below cooperative. Para max is 5 million for cooperatives, 1 million for individual.
Yes, Madam Chair, di ba katulad yung sinasite mo na bangko sa Indonesia,
Yes.
ginawa din nilang convenient dun sa mga farmers nila yung modality of payment. Di ba? Yung kinukwento nyo ho na parang yung sa sari-sari store, pwede na sila magbayad. Yung, may ganong technology na ginagamit. Kasi di ba dun sa isang hearing natin,
kaya nga
ganyan
gusto
din
ko,
yung nirereklamo na ang
kaya nga gusto kong
sila.
pumunta yung DBP at Land Bank do sa Bank eh, para ano. Alam mo kasi, nagpunta kami sa probinsya, tinitingnan namin yung intercropping ng cacao versus under the coconut tree. Tapos, ano to, barangay, di namimili yung Cargill, namimili sila ng cacao eh. So may buying station sila doon. Maliit na buying station. Tapos sa tabi may sari-sari store. Tapos doon sa sari-sari store, may computer lang siyang hawak na gano'n. Nag-a-accept siya ng deposit. So yung nagtitinda dito sa Cargill, pwede niya na i-deposito doon. Tapos kaya naman dapat niya i-deposito para may record siya ng kanyang sales. Para pag nag-apply siya ng loan, alam nung bangko na meron siyang kita, di ba? Para alam na makakabayad siya. Oo. Gulat na gulat ako, isa lang parang parang tawag dito, yung ginagamit natin na radio. Parang kasing laki lang nung radio natin na yung ginagamit ng mga security guard. Ganun lang. Nakakagawa siya ng resibo, nagdideposito mga tao sa kanya. Tapos ang bayad sa kanya, yung amount ng pasahe mula dun sa baryo hanggang doon sa bayan na may bangko. Parang yun ang binabayad niyang fees. Na hindi na siya mamamasahe, dito niya na lang i-deposito. Yun ang amount ng fees na binabayad niya for processing the deposit. Sari-sari store nga nagtatanggap ng deposito eh. Kaya tuwan-tuwa ako dun eh. Tuwan-tuwa ako dun sa Bank na yun eh. Oo.
Madam Chair, have you heard of the SB Corp? SB Corp?
Yes.
Okay, ganito po ang problema ng SB Corp. Kaya hindi ho napautang, nagkaroon ng allocation ng PCC at saka PhilExport. Hindi ho nagamit yun, hindi ho magamit yung nikalahati nun. Kasi uutang ka lang ng 50 mil, 100,000. Kailangan mo ng financial statement. Miski sa Land Bank po, ganyan ang mga problema. Uutang ng 100,000. magpo-produce ka pa ng mga financial
Mag-ano
documents, hindi ka
kayo?
naman qualified eh. Hindi ka qualified na gumawa nun, gagastos ka. Natatakot po yung mga uutang for 50,000 to 100,000, Madam Chair.
Mr.
You need to
Amores,
prepare.
gumawa ka na lang ng position paper. I'll give it to
I will.
Cecil Borromeo of Land Bank para mag-reform sila.
Alam po nila yun. Alam po
alam
nila
mo,
yun.
alam mo, kasi ako kami, ni Manny, nung kami 25 years old, maliit lang kami, may 2 truck kami. Nang
Alam ko
kami,
po
di
yun.
naman kami nagsasubmit ng financial statement, BPI. Naranasan namin yun eh. Oo.
Alam po
Nagpunta rin kami sa rural bank eh. Oo. Wala
alam po
namang
ni
pinasubmit sa amin financial statement eh. Basta uutang ka, tinitingnan ka kung ikaw kasi,
Alam po ni President
Relayo.
Cecilio, alam po ni even from way back bago siya naging Pangulo ng Land Bank, nag-uusap na po kami. Meron po silang countrywide development program. Nung ginader na namin yung mga SMEs, financial statement for the last several years, gagawa ka ng
Hindi.
accounting entry mo, napakahirap po. Natakot na ho yung
Hindi
hirap.
po,
Yung
hindi.
mga SME hindi makahirap.
Ibigay mo sa akin, kakausapin ko siya.
Madam
Okay.
And
Chair.
Okay.
kakausapin ko siya
Salamat
doon.
po.
Kasi ang pera niya is galing sa budget ng Pilipinas. Wala siyang risk doon. Ibinibigay yun sa kanya every year. Ang ano lang niya is magpatong doon. Kaya kahit sa risky niya bigay, walang problema yon. Kasi
I will do that.
hindi naman deposito ng bangko yon. That is a national budget ng Pilipinas na
Okay.
ibinibigay sa kanila every year to lend to the agricultural sector. Hindi
Madam Chair.
hindi deposito. Yes, Senator
Madam
Binay.
Chair, maybe we can request na may representative naman ho ata tayo ng Land Bank. And maybe
Yeah.
the other banks, if they can submit to the committee, ano ba yung mga documentary requirements para maka-avail ng loan or even open an account for our farmers or cooperatives? And then
In fact,
siguro,
I wrote to them na dapat pag-aangin nila ang pagbukas ng account ng mahihirap para yung ating 'di ba namimigay ang gobyerno ng financial assistance during calamity, ganon, idaan na sa bangko kaysa yung magko-complain na hindi nakarating do sa beneficiary. Kung ang beneficiary may bank account, doon na lang i-deposito ng DSWD, wala nang complain ng graft and corruption, di ba? Oo. Kaya importante na yung ating mahihirap may bank account. Kaya siguro sila hindi nagba-bank account, malaki ang minimum deposit. Dapat tanggalin na yun para sa mahihirap, di ba? Para lang magka-bank account yung mahihirap, para yung lahat ng privileges nila coming from government, di-deposito na lang ng government. Hindi na maa-accuse ang government ng corruption, di ba? Palagi yun na issue eh. Oo.
kasi siguro ho, para dun sa ibang farmers natin, yung mag-produce lang ng 2 government-issued ID, baka sa kanila. Yung iba, mahirap na ho yun, di ba?
Pero ngayon magna-national ID system tayo eh. Hopefully, masosolve na yan, di ba?
Ito po ang hinihingi lang naming request, no, yung mga malilit na farmer, no. Certificate ng barangay unit, tapos yung kanilang list ng kanilang lupa at saka marketing agreement na meron doon sa bibili na kanilang kalakal. Dapat that alone is already a principal. Sinabi ko na po sa Land Bank yan eh, that alone should be a principal prerequisite already that will qualify them already.
Alam mo ba talaga, ang gobyerno, Mr. Amores, kami nga, senador, konsumin na kami, lalo na siguro sa private sector. Diba? Medyo takot pa sa amin kasi kami senador ng Pilipinas. Pero, Diyos ko, kung alam mo lang ang konsumisyon ko for every project na ginawa ko, na inabot ko sa gobyerno. Sobra yung red tape.
We already have manifested that on many occasions. I-limit lang yung certificate lang ng barangay unit,
Sige.
marketing agreement, and certification ng landholding. Karamihan ng mga CLOA, ibinenta na ng mga farmer ulit dahil hindi nila magamit na pang pautang yun. Ito ang karanasan as always for the longest time. Whether
Hindi.
it's
Kami
SME,
marami ako nakitang klowa dito. Hindi nila alam kung ano gagawin. It's a lack of capability to understand what they're supposed to do. O kaya ako pinromote yung farm school para kung hindi man makapag-aral ng yung farm school will tell them what to do. Oo. Kasi
Anyway,
ang dami kong
i-highlight ko po
nakita
sa
dyan
inyo.
Di, talaga naghihintay na lang sila ng bibili ng lupa nila Oo, hindi
Anyway,
sila capable of managing Kasi hindi naman sila tinuruan. Kaya importante din yung capacity building
Ipadadala ko ulit sa inyo in bullet
Yes,
point po
yeah.
ito para
Oo.
ma-take up po kagad immediately ng committee natin.
Tsaka
Para
pwede nating ilagay sa law yung requirement, di ba? Para
Opo.
sumunod. Oo, pwede natin ilagay yun sa law
Para nandun na.
Di ba? Ito lang ang pwede nilang i-require. Di ba? Kasi
Yung
hindi naman marunong gumawa ng ibang bagay. Ngayon, kung sasabihin nilang okay na yun, ilalagay ko sa batas.
Yung sinasabi pong risk, kunyari, hindi nakabayad ng 25%, pero imagine po yung economic activity.
At saka hindi,
na
may
na-generate.
guarantee fund May guarantee fund.
Kaya nga, kasi ganito po.
Ikuha nila ng guarantee.
Yung Phil guarantee naman, tsaka PhilExim is willing to guarantee up to 50%. But wala pong appetite yung commercial bank. Sabi ng commercial bank, ayaw namin.
Di
yung
wala
Phil
silang
guarantee, hindi
appetite. Di rural bank, trip bank, land
Anyway,
bank, DBP. Di ko ayaw
papadala
nila.
ko po lahat- papadala ko po
Mag-ano
lahat
sila.
sa
Diba? Alam mo,
Para-
dapat lahat ng bangko, mag-create sila para sa small. Baka pwedeng ang CB, mag-require sila na lahat ng bangko meron for small and micro loan. Oo,
Sana may
diba?
batas na ganyan.
Oo. Diba?
Sana po may batas na mandating po na papautang nila with this less unfortunate na kasama nating MSME na biktima na ng mga import ng ating mga
Hindi ba ito
produkto sa
yung
Asia.
batas na yon, Agri-Agra law?
Opo. Kaya nga po,
Supposed to
kailangan
be, ito
madami
yun
i-amen.
Ito
Dapat
yun
madami po kayong i-amen.
Kaya
Simplify
nga,
ng
ibigay nyo sa amin yung gusto nyong ilagay, ilalagay natin. Yun naman ang sinasabi ko sa inyo na ayoko ng batas na very general. Gusto ko specific, para siguradong ang implementation maayos, di ba?
Isasubmit po namin sa inyo simplification of the Agri-Agra law.
Okay,
Napakahaba
sige.
ko na. We will do that. Maraming salamat po for your time.
Okay, so we ask
We will do
the
that.
BSP to continue with their presentation.
Salamat po.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Senator Nancy Bina and Senator Amy Marcos. Thank you very much po sa opportunity for sharing the proposed bill. Madam Chair, I will just take off from the opening remarks of MBM Bruce, particularly on the three main components of the proposed bill. So the first component relates to the amendments that shall enhance access by rural communities to private sector financing. The second component pertains to the creation of an agribusiness management capacity and institution building fund, or the special fund. And the third component relates to the establishment of an agricultural and fisheries finance and capacity building council, which shall be responsible for the management and operations of the special fund. The third component, Madam Chair, will be further enhanced, as you provided also guidance to us earlier in terms of the membership composition and the specific projects where the fund should go. Next slide, please. So in the next slide, the proposed amendment introduced enhancements which aim to increase productivity and income of an agricultural household by broadening beneficiaries' eligible activities and the modes of funding. First, the coverage of the ultimate beneficiaries of the law is proposed to be expanded to include members of the household of an agricultural worker, including their associations, organizations, and enterprises or MSMEs. This recognizes that an agricultural-related worker is part of a broader social and economic support system. Second, the proposed bill broadens the types of activities that are eligible for private sector financing. This includes activities that can augment an agricultural household's income and benefit the rural community in general. Lastly, the bill broadens the modes of funding for agriculture by providing incentives which shall direct bank funding to priority agricultural sectors, such as agrarian reform beneficiaries. We are proposing to set a multiple factor for loans to these sectors in terms of considering them as a form of compliance with the Agri-Agra credit requirement. Second, by recognizing grants that will be made to a special fund as a mode of compliance. So if banks are having difficulty finding the right borrower for this loanable funds, they could just put their money in the special fund and that will be considered as eligible compliance. And third, by facilitating access to funding for financial institutions that are established and operating in rural communities by allowing deposits maintained by a bank in these financial institutions as eligible compliance. This
Number 4. Can I ask about number 4? What do you mean by that? Number 4.
Madam
Number-
Chair, the grants that would be provided by
Bibigyan mo ng
financial
grant. Imbis na
Yes, ma'am.
magpa-loan, mag-grant sila.
grant po, and that will be considered as eligible compliance, Madam Chair.
Ibig mo sabihin, libre na yon, hindi na pautang.
Pag-grant po, Madam Chair, yes po.
Oh, ngayon, sino makikinabang doon? Yung committee.
Yung capacity building and agricultural related activities of
Hindi ba may budget na yon?
Madam Chair, yung sa special fund po, meron po tayo. And then banks could also
May
provide.
budget na yun. Lalagyan na natin ng budget yun. Ba't doon pupunta? Hindi ba dapat pumunta sa fund tapos kasi di ba yung fund, di ba sinabi ko sa inyo, ang gagawin sa fund, may fund na pupunta, tapos i-assign na natin kung saan pupunta yon, di ba? So lalagyan na rin natin ng budget yung capacity building, lalagyan na natin ng budget yung cooperatives, formation of cooperatives. Bakit mag-grant pa sila doon? Oh.
Madam Chair, we could sharpen the language for this one.
Yeah,
The-
you better change
put in the
that.
fund
Kasi,
po. Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay yan. Kasi sinabi ko na paggawa natin ng fund, lalagay na natin magkano doon sa fund ang pupunta dito, magkano pupunta dito. Before kasi yung fund, pumupunta lang sa PCIC, di ba? Sa crop insurance, pumupunta sa SB Corporation. And then ngayon gusto nyong include yung capacity building at saka training, di ba? Kasi yun ang kulang sa kanila. Oo. Kailangan paggawa natin yung pera pupunta sa fund, tapos by percentage pupunta do sa beneficiary natin. Hindi didiretso sa ganon. Dapat
We will
maliwanag
consider
yun.
that.
Oo.
We will do that, Madam Chair.
Oo. Hindi.
We will
Oo. Kasi sinabi ko na nga sa iyo from my experience in legislation, pag magulo legislation, hindi na i-implement. Oo. Kaya tayo, dapat very specific tayo kung ano gagawin natin. Para yung mga tao, hindi nila mababago, they will follow. Diba? Katulad ng sinasabi nung na gusto nila, simple lang ang pag-apply para do sa mahihirap. So, siguro at a certain point ng loan, kung maliit lang yung loan, para ang maghihiram nun ay malilit na farmer, ilalagay na natin, ito lang ang requirement, di ba? Para na-solve natin ang problema. Kasi kung pababahalan natin sa kanila, tapos hindi naman nila susundin, ilagay natin sa batas para sundin nila, di ba? Iyan din, dapat ilagay natin sa batas para
We will
sundin.
do that, Madam
Okay,
Chair. We will
sige.
sharpen the language po.
Yeah, okay.
Madam Chair, in the next slide, the bill also aims to propose a mandatory credit requirement that is responsive, we deem that is responsive to domestic condition. The first item was already highlighted. You highlighted this earlier on removing the distinction between the 15% agriculture and 10% agrarian reform credit. But we will be maintaining the 25% credit quota. Now, the second item, this provides a sunset provision of 10 years from the approval of the act.
Yung bang ating act ng 2009, kailan ng expiry?
Wala po siyang sunset provision, Madam Chair.
Okay, so hindi tayo kailangan magpasa ng batas at this date kasi wala siyang sunset provision. Kasi noon yung ASEP may sunset provision. Kaya kailangan magpasa ka na renewal before the time of the provision of the sunset provision. Ito wala. I'm just
Yes,
curious.
Madam Chair.
Okay,
Yes, Madam
sige.
Chair.
Okay.
We believe, Madam Chair, that the 10 years would provide us the time to implement strategic interventions to make agricultural financing not just a matter of compliance, but a strategic and viable business for banks. After this period, the government may consider pursuing other forms of intervention that would benefit the needs of more mature and we hope more progressive agricultural sector.
Okay lang.
Madam Chair, for the third item, we are also proposing to provide a 5-year grace period for newly established banks within which no penalty shall be assessed for non or under compliance with the requirement to promote foreign investment in the banking industry. Currently, Madam Chair, under the existing law, as soon as a bank starts operations, it is immediately required to set aside 25% of its minimum capital for Agri-Agra lending, which is also quite onerous. The 5-year grace period will provide the bank with enough time to build its loan base, expand its clientele, and set up operations. Now, for the next slide, the second component in the proposed amendments relates to the creation of a special fund. This is meant to address one of the root causes of the lack of funding to the agricultural sector, which, as we have already discussed earlier, the technical and organizational capacity of our agricultural borrowers. The special fund will be used to finance well-defined agricultural and fishery-related activities, as well as capacity and institution building programs of farmers and fisherfolk cooperatives and organizations. The special fund will consist of contributions from the banking sector in the form of grants, Madam Chair, which we will also, the language will be further enhanced, as well as penalties from non-compliance with the mandatory agricultural financing requirement. The initial amount of the fund is targeted at 10 billion pesos. This is comprised of penalties due from banks under Republic Act number 10,000, the existing law, collected from the effectivity of the proposed law, and 2 billion pesos contribution of the banking industry, which shall be chargeable against future penalties in case of any shortfall. In the next slide, Madam Chair, we propose that the activities, the fund will be allocated in the following manner, as may be also determined by the Council and guidance provided by this committee. We are proposing to allocate 70% for technical capacity building programs and Agri-Agra pilot projects, 20% for Agri-Agra learning opportunities and research, and 10% for financial literacy, as well as programs that will professionalize the management of cooperatives and duly registered organizations of rural, agricultural, and fisheries households. In the next slide, duly registered training and capacity building organizations, cooperatives, and other duly registered organizations that support rural agricultural fisheries households may apply with the Affcc, that's the proposed council, for funding of their capacity and institution building programs and activities. The special fund, we are also proposing to include a provision that the special fund will be audited by the Commission on Audit in accordance with existing auditing laws, rules, and regulations. The last component, Madam Chair, of the proposed bill refers to the establishment of the council, which shall be responsible for the management and operations of the special fund. The composition of the Affcc, we have initial composition in mind, Madam Chair, but we will also defer to your guidance in terms of the members of the council. So what we have in mind is it ideally should have a good balance and broad representation from the private sector and government in favor of agencies that can contribute to promoting the interests of the agriculture and fisheries sector. This will allow concerted and collective insights and efforts in identifying eligible capacity building programs of rural community organizations that holistically address the requirements of the agri-sector. The appointed chair of the council should also have sufficient expertise in agriculture and fisheries. Our initial proposal, Madam Chair, is to have the Secretary of DA to chair the council, and the number of the members should also not impede decision making. The proposed amendments to RA number 10,000 include the powers, duties, and functions of the AFFCC to provide clarity in its purpose and ensure that it will be able to properly discharge its functions. But we will defer also to the wisdom of the Senate in terms of further enhancing the proposed powers and duties identified in the proposed bill. This ends my presentation, Madam Chair and Senators Marcos and Minay. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so the next presenter, yung ating who is the next presenter? Yung ating what do you call this? Yung committee secretariat. Who is the next presenter after the central bank?
Madam Chair, there is a suggestion that the agencies that submitted their position papers, like Land Bank, the GBP, should speak for them to explain their position papers.
Okay, let them speak.
I suggest we call on Land Bank first.
Yes. Yeah, we recognize the Land Bank of the Philippines.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. First of all, our President and CEO, Ms. Cecil Borromeo, would like to send her appreciation for the invitation given to Land Bank. No? She also sends her apologies for being unable to attend this morning. Together with me, Madam Chair, is Assistant Vice President Ed Lozano of our Lending Programs Management Group. I am Elcid Pangilinan of the Strategy and Knowledge Management Group. If we may be allowed, Madam Chair, I would like to refer to the position paper submitted by Land Bank. It's a 10-page document, but in the interest of time, I will only highlight the salient points. We also provided the committee secretariat with a copy of the position paper. The submission of Land Bank was signed by our officer in charge, Executive Vice President Julio D. Climaco Jr., and it highlights that we are recognizing that there are a lot of challenges to comply with the required credit quota of 25% of our loanable funds for banks, 15% for Agri, and 10% for Agra. We noted that in the provision on Section 1, there is a revision to the non-compliance computed at 2% for non-compliance, while Land Bank remains to be compliant with RA 10,000 as of December last year, 2020. Land Bank continues to intensify its support to the agri sector. Our total loans last year amounted to 237 billion, and the bank channeled these loans to our mandated sector, comprising small farmers, including Agrarian Reform Beneficiaries and their associations, and small farmers and fishers and their associations as well. Based on the data from the BSP on compliance, most of the banks do not have full compliance with the mandated percentages. However, we are happy to report to this committee that we have been complying with a total of more than the requirement, Madam Chair.
Excuse me. We definitely expect you to be compliant because
Yes, Madam Chair.
that is your mandate. We just want you to give us the opinion why the other banks are not complying. Ano yung difficulty nila? Para yung kasi sinusolve natin problema ngayon di ba? So yung input nyo kung bakit nahihirapan yung mga bangko to comply. Para yun ang sosolve natin sa amendment ng Agri-Agra law.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think the BAP has representation here, and they will be able to provide the view
Ikaw
from
lang ba?
the.
What is your opinion?
Hi, Madam Chair. Based
Dapat may
also on.
opinion ka kasi you
Correct
have
po.
been doing lending
Yes, Madam Chair.
for the nth year. So, dapat meron ka ring opinion para makita natin kung nagkakaiba ba yung opinion nyo o pare-pareho ba opinion nyo, ano ang better. And you please tell Cecil that Land Bank and DBP should go to Brave Bank in Indonesia. I have been telling them that. And
Yes, Madam
maybe
Chair.
look at their practices para baka mamaya yun ang input na kailangan natin kasi they have been successful in lending to small. They are the big, yun ang pinakamalaking bangko sa Indonesia and yet 85% of their portfolio is small and micro. So, that is something. Kasi pag malalaking bangko, hindi sila nagkaka-portfolio ng ganyan sa Pilipinas. So, maybe you should find their model and discuss with us para maging guidance namin sa paggawa namin itong Agri-Agra law na to. Kasi, ang difficulty talaga natin as what the people are saying, na yung mga bangko, especially the big banks, they cannot lend to small borrowers. Dapat mahanap natin yung model, how can they do that? Oo, di ba?
Opo.
Yun, kaya gusto ko sana, being government bank, you should go there and share with us yung practice, di ba?
Opo.
Sabihin mo kay Cecil.
Yes, ma'am.
At saka doon sa presidente ng DBP. Oo.
Opo. Si PCO Manny Erbosa is also in the call po, and maybe he can also make that representation later.
Oo, sige.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Yes.
Opo.
Okay.
Can we just request kahit for submission na lang ho sa Land Bank, yung percentage kung ilan ho yung sa mga lenders sila, kung ilan yung cooperatives, ilan yung mga small farmers natin.
Oo.
And
We will do that po. Opo.
And then the documentary requirements in opening an account.
Yes.
Opo. We
Ano ang
can
nire-require
submit
nyo sa maliliit na borrower na documentary requirement kasi yun yung complaint nila na hindi naman capable mag-submit ng ganong requirement yung mga small borrowers and yet you require them. Yun yung, di ba?
We actually simplified, Madam Chair.
Okay. So you send us a copy of
Yes,
your
Madam Chair.
requirement. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We actually simplified that list of requirements from a list that is more than 10 pages to 1 page na lang po, Madam Chair. So
Kasi na 1 page, mabigat din yun. Ang laki ng 1 page.
Opo. And yes,
Madam
Madam
Chair,
Chair.
isa po.
Maawa ka naman. Simple farmer, hindi nga nakatapos, baka hindi nakatapos ng high school, tapos bibigyan mo ng 1 page requirement. Miski ako, hindi ko kaya yun.
Sige po, we can further look at those po. And I think there are a lot of
Kasi
suggestions.
naman, yung pera nyo, binigay lang sa inyo yan ng gobyerno. Wala naman kayong binabayad na interest dyan, walang risk dyan, hindi yan pera ng depositor. Kung pera ng depositor, pag-ingatan nyo, pero yung perang binigay sa inyo ng gobyerno, ipantulong nyo na yun. Kasi wala naman kayong risk dyan, hindi na naman kayo sisingilin ng gobyerno. Taon-taon naman binibigyan kayo according sa law. Ano ba yan? Ba't mo bibigyan ng 1 page requirement?
Meron po kaming katulad po ng binanggit ninyo na mga funds for the agricultural sector. Definitely po, hindi po namin
may fund ka sa ASEF,
Opo.
may fund ka sa RCEP, may fund ka manggagaling sa Coconut Industry Development Fund. Meron kang fund na nanggagaling sa SIDA-LO. Wala namang wala yung interest sa inyo, binigay na lang yung taon-taon ng gobyerno hindi kayo nagbabayad ng interest doon Parang serbisyo nyo sa mga farmer yun ba't mo bibigyan ng 1 page requirement, di ba? Tapos may guarantee pa na kung takot kayo sa risk, pwede nyo ipag-guarantee. Di ba?
Opo.
Sige.
Going back to your question po about what we think is the important elements in agricultural lending, marami na rin pong sinabi ang BSP about creditworthiness at ang availability po. At capacity building. No? Siguro po our friends from the private banks also see a lot of risks in lending to this sector. Opo. So just to proceed, so we also recognize that the increase to 2% from the 0.5% of the penalties on non-compliance may actually reinforce compliance by the bank, no? But may we also suggest for the interest and of our private sector banks that clarification on the basis of the 2% be also clarified. No? On the resources po, on the provision in the law, in the proposed legislation for the amendment of the Agri-Agra law, there was mention about Land Bank and DBP using resources to innovate, develop, promote, and invest in digital automation technology. At kasama po yung mga binanggit nyo kanina na experience ng Indonesia. And we're happy also to present that in our in Land Bank, we continuously pursue the implementation of innovative lending programs. No? So we have different programs to increase agricultural productivity and incomes of small farmers and fishers that will lift them out of poverty and provide other financial services to promote greater financial inclusion, especially in the unbanked and unserved areas across the country. We also
Halimbawa,
make use
one
of-
question,
Yes, po.
Iho. Kasi sumulat
Yes, Madam
ako
Chair.
sa inyo. Kasi gusto ko sana mas maraming tao. Kasi 70% daw ng tao sa Pilipinas unbank. Ibig sabihin 30% lang ang merong bank account. Eh gusto namin
Yes, Madam
lahat may bank account para yung mahihirap na bibigyan ng financial assistance during time of emergency, doon idadaan sa bank account nila yung mga para hindi sila nagko-complain na nawawala yung pera. So ngayon, ikaw, pag mahirap sa inyo, smallest depositor, ano ang minimum requirement nyo na deposito?
Meron po kaming mga produkto na hindi po kailangan ng minimum
Ano
deposit. Opo. So for example po, lang ngayon during the registration for the national ID, Land Bank is co-locating with PSA in these registration centers. And we ask the registrants kung meron na po silang bank account. At
Kung wala.
nandun po kami, ini-issuean po namin sila ng transaction account. Libre po yon. So, which is
walang
possibility-
deposito. Pwede bang walang
Wala po.
deposito? Paano mabubuksan yung account na walang deposito?
Opo.
Dapat
meron pong
kung
tinatawag
piso
na-
o 2 piso o 5 piso o 10 piso. But there should be a deposit. Otherwise, may bank account bang walang laman?
Oh, it's a transactional account, Madam Chair, using the MasterCard ecosystem to enable us to provide e-money, electronic money, the use of technology for these kinds of mobile money to provide for these registrants.
Paano
dito
kung
po sa
mahirap
mga-
walang capable of doing e-money?
Opo. So in these places po, we have what we call agent banking partners. And ito po ay mga pwede pong maliliit na stores or mga retail agents na meron po silang point of sale devices, no? For cash in, cash out, or transfer
Can
of
you
funds.
make a report on that to us para itatry namin,
Opo.
di ba?
Sige po.
Can you make a
actually-
report on how to do it para itatry ko
Sige
kung
po.
makakaya kong gawin yon para malaman ko kung makakaya din gawin ng mahihirap yun, di ba?
Sige po.
Oo,
Madam
kasi-
Chair?
We can provide
yes,
a report
yes,
on that.
Nancy. Senator
Siguro,
Nancy.
Mr. Elcid, ano yan? Parang GCash? Same concept?
Yes, Senator Binay. It's like a mobile wallet,
parang
just like
Alipay,
GCash or
parang Alipay.
Paymaya. Yes, Yes po, opo. So
Okay.
initially it's free and then we
Pero
can
meron
then
silang
transact
bank
with
account
our-
na kung gusto lagyan ng gobyerno ng pera, yung malalagyan. Ganun ba?
Yes po, yes po.
Pwede.
Opo.
Pwede.
Opo.
Pero
Yan
pag
po
ganun
yung
yung
intent.
pero pag ganun yung konsepto, it's hindi siya more for savings di ba? It's more
For spending.
pangbayad mo. For spending, hindi pang saving, di ba? Syempre gusto din natin turuan yung mga farmers natin ng
Opo.
konsepto
Mag-save.
ng saving.
Oo.
So,
Meron pong-
baka magkaroon ng ganong ano. Kasi
Pag ganun savings
interest
account,
yan,
ano minimum requirement para mag-open sila? Pag halimbawa savings account, isang mahirap, ano ang i-deposito niya? Pwede ba 10 piso?
Using this transactional account po, so wala pong maintaining po
Oo
ito.
nga, pero yung savings
Although may
account,
Yung savings account, I think po meron po kaming 500 na
di man kaya yung 500.
Oo nga po. So,
O ano,
so ang
sinabi ko na sa inyo, ibaba nyo eh.
Opo. Opo.
Government
That's why
bank
po-
kayo, dapat magse-serve kayo sa mga tao, hindi kayo parang commercial bank na may mga stockholder, ang stockholder nyo gobyerno, di ba? Magkano? Ba't 500? Mahal ang 500, walang 500 ang mahihirap.
Opo.
Ano?
So that's an important input po. That's why in our products and
Ano,
services.
tatanungin kita, tingin mo, ano kaya ng mahirap mag-open ng account?
Ang kaya po siguro
Ikaw, para
libre.
mag-open ng account, hindi naman libre. Huwag libre. Ikaw, ano
Opo.
kaya? Ikaw,
Siguro
tatanungin kita, ano kaya ng
100.
mahirap?
Initially, 100.
I mean,
Pero po-
100 ba? Kaya ba
Hindi ko po
100? Baka, tingin mo kaya? Para i-require
Kaya mo
natin
ng
siya.
100?
Kaya ba? 100? Hindi siguro?
Baka
Ikaw,
alam mo yung 100 kasi pinakamurang load, 'di ba? Magkano ba pinakamurang load?
yun, yung
Kaya
pinakamurang
po yung
load.
pinakamura po ay libre.
Hindi,
Hindi,
yung
na
load.
sa cellphone.
Yung bumibili,
Sa
nakakabili,
cellphone, diba?
nakakabili ng load
Nakakabili
eh.
ng
Yun nga,
load.
magkano ang
50 pesos
pinakamura?
yata
30
po eh.
pesos.
Opo.
Na? Ilan?
30 pesos
Oh,
pinakamura.
yun ang
Pwede
dapat
po.
na ano
30
nyo.
pesos.
Hindi,
Ifo-
yung 1 month ba yung 30 pesos? Hindi ata 1 month yung 30 pesos.
Hindi, load lang.
Load.
Load lang. Kasi
Isang
hindi
araw
naman
po
nila
yata yun.
cannot,
Isang araw.
cannot
Isang araw.
afford ang isang load na bigla, di ba? Oo.
I think, Madam Chair, okay na siguro yung 100 kasi yung iba sa kanila, nakakabili nga ng alak saka ng sigarilyo eh.
Alam mo naman sila, iba priority nila eh. Kaya,
Doon.
ikaw, ano tingin mo? Aimee, ikaw, sa kanya 100, ikaw Aimee.
Okay lang.
Ako baka 50, di ba?
Sige po.
Hindi,
lower
para
the
lang
better.
magbukas na ng account, di ba? Para magbukas. Ano ba yung mabe-break even nyo yung ibibigay nyong papel? Ay, yung mga banker dito. Di ba, bibigyan nyo ng papel pag nag-open ng account? Para break even kayo doon. Magkano?
Magkano ho ba yung
Actually
cost ng
po-
passbook? Kasi yung passbook,
Oo.
di ba, parang may ganong cost.
Oo, may fixed cost eh.
Actually po, kaya po ang mas maganda po ay using electronic means para po mas lower pa yung cost of
Eh,
administration.
di nga natin alam kung yung matatandang yung marunong noon eh. Di ba?
Opo.
Alam mo naman sila, hindi, average age ng farmer is 57. Ano ba yan?
Opo.
Hindi naman lahat yon marunong na. Tayo nga naandito na sa syudad. Minsan tatanga-tanga pa tayo. Di lalo na yung mga farmer sa probinsya. Ako nga hirap na hirap dyan sa ano na yan eh. May taga-bukas pa ako ng aking Zoom. May taga-bukas ako ng ganun. Hindi ako nagdidetalye sa ganyan. Nag-aral na ako. Lalo naman yung mga farmer sa probinsya. Di ba?
Sir. Saka yung dalawang government ID, yung mga farmer po, wala akong dalawang government ID. Yung iisa lang ang ID.
Ano ID ng farmer ba? A typical farmer, ano ID?
Voters ID. Yan ang
Voters registration.
Yeah.
Oo,
Wala
yan.
wala na rin hong voters ID. Tinigil na ng COMELEC yung pag-distribute ng voters ID.
Really? Really?
Yes ho. Di ba,
Oo.
Sen Aimee? Parang wala na atang
Parang
budget
meron
para
pa rin.
mag-produce.
Yung wala na yung information.
Mm.
Hindi naman sila
Anyway,
kumukuha ng PIN, hindi rin kumukuha ng sedula. Minsan, driver.
Pero,
Tulad
pero,
tayo sa private sector, may driver's license tayo, may
yeah,
passport.
may passport.
Correct.
hindi, may mayaman ka, kaya ka may passport. Eh, yung mahihirap ba may passport? Wala nga driver's license yun kasi wala naman silang sasakyan. Ano ba?
Wala
Madam
yung PIN
Chair?
number kasi wala naman daw income.
Walang income, hindi nagde-declare ng income o ano. You know,
Wala rin
Madam Chair?
sedula kasi hindi daw wala
kasi
namang
gulat na gulat
paggagamitan.
ako. Kasi according to my reading, 70% unbanked. O 30%
Madam
lang ang may
Kasi mga
bank
ID
account.
eh.
Hindi nga,
Oh.
kaya nga ho, Madam Chair, I
Hindi
think
ba pwede
importante,
i-consider birth certificate period, parang national ID?
walang photo.
Pwede rin yun. Eh, may birth certificate ba? Kukunin sa munisipyo.
At least alam nilang kunin yon. At saka kailangan nila yon for other transactions.
Dapat aralan mo yun, iho. Eh, ikaw kasi yata, sa bangko ka, hindi mo naintindihan yung buhay ng mahihirap. Dapat intindihin mo, ikaw ang magre-recommend kung ano gagawin, hindi mo naiintindihan ng hirap ng mahihirap.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Chair, siguro kaya
Opo,
napaka-importante yung registry of system ng
National ID.
National ID. Tsaka di ba ho yung Department of Agriculture, kailangan
Meron,
meron siyang
meron.
registry ng mga
Oo,
farmers.
binibigyan ba yun ng may binibigyan ba yun ng card pag ikaw nasa registry ng farmers? Kasi lahat sila
Wala po.
nagpapa-register ngayon eh. Dapat magbigay sila, di ba?
Wala pa po.
Or
Wala
siguro
pong
maganda ho
ID.
itanong sa Department of Agriculture kung
meron
implement na ba nila yung
Nandyan.
registry.
Tanungin mo. Kasi nagagawa sila ng registry ngayon kasi yung mga batas namin, kailangan may registry para ma-entitled ka dun sa mga sa mga pwedeng bigyan. At tanungin naandito ang tawagin mo iho yung
Department
DA.
of Agriculture.
Oh, nasaan? Andyan eh. DA. Palabasin mo yung DA, Attorney Lina.
Yes,
Philip.
Madam Chair.
Tawagin mo yung DA, tanungin natin.
Undersecretary Evelyn, ma'am.
Tanungin
yes.
mo, pag nag-register ka ba doon sa registry ng farmer, may ID ba yon?
Kindly answered, Department of Agriculture.
Mo nawala na Department of Agriculture. Tayo lang tayo lang nagtsatsaga sa agriculture. Nasan yung agriculture? Dapat sila na andito.
Yusik Evelyn Lavinia, ma'am.
Tawagin mo.
Sir, ma'am, yung mga po, they do the registration through the LGU po, local government unit.
May ID ba yon pag na-register ka doon?
I think so po, yes.
Tawagan mo. Tapos sagutin mo dito para kasi importante yun kung nasa registry pag nag-apply sa mga bangko, isang requirement na yun, di ba? May ID, di ba? At least alam legitimate sila. Tawagan mo yung mga huwag ka sumagot ng ata. Tawagan mo at then mag-manifest ka dito, iha.
So it's under the Department of Agriculture po. The one in charge there is the field operations po. That's
Tawagan
under
mo
the
nga
Department
ngayon, tapos isagot mo dito.
Senator Villar, may ID ba sila?
Tinatanong nga natin eh.
we're
It's a
calling
proof
them
of
for that.
registration.
At tawagan mo. Hindi mo ba matatawagan yon para sumagot ka dito?
Sa ACPC?
Ano?
Si Jocelyn Bajolan po ito sa ACPC.
Meron silang ID do sa registry?
Wala po. Yun po ang plano. Pero sa ngayon po, basta nakalis, meron lang po.
Halimbawa ako farmer. Pag dumating ako sa inyo, hahanapin nyo doon. Di maganda na may ID ako para alam nyo na
Yun po ang
yung laki
gagawin
ng budget nyo, hindi nyo mabigyan ng ID yung farmer do sa registry nyo. Ano ba yun?
Inaayos pa po kasi ma'am yung listahan, pero yan po talaga yung plano gagawan po ng ID. Pero inaayos pa po kasi yung listahan ng farmers.
Hindi ba pwedeng gagawa ka na ng ID tapos pang nag-register sa'yo, isusulat mo pa nga lang, pipirmahan mo, ID na nila yun, bibigay mo na sa kanila. Di ba?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Pre-printed ang ID. Ano ba yun? O, sabihin mo, ayusin nila yan. Ano ba yan? Registry na yan. Di ba? Para yung mga tao, mahalin nila yung ID. Pag nanghihingi sila ng entitlement nila, may pakikita nila yung ID nila. Di ba?
Opo, ma'am. Opo.
Ayusin nyo yun. O, di
Yes, ma'am.
wala. Wala. Ang answer, wala. Okay.
Other words.
Okay, so ano pa? O, ang
Opo, Madam.
DBP, nandiyan ang presidente ng DBP, baka mas magaling sumagot.
Hindi yan, si Manny.
Oh, DBP.
Kumusta po, Madam Cynthia? Good to see you here, and Senator Nancy and Senator Amy.
Gusto
Ano
namin
po?
mag-input ka kung paano mai-improve natin yung Agri-Agra law. Ano ba problema? Oo, para
Ito po, you mentioned about the bank rakyat.
yeah,
And I
brain bank.
I think yes, it's a big one like Rabobank in Netherlands and stuff like that. So there's really a very successful proof of concept there. In fact, it's so profitable that I think DBS already bought in. Pero ito masasabi ko.
Singapore, di ba?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, pero ito masasabi ko, Madam Chair. Nagsama tayo noong 2019 nung sa RCEP sa Isabela, tandaan ba nyo? So I'm saying that what we put together there is already a model.
Ano ginawa mo sa Isabela? O ano ginawa mo sa Isabela?
Pumunta, kasama nyo kami, di ba?
Yeah. Oo.
What we did was we concentrated on the wholly owned farmer cooperative called NMIC, pinapatakbo ni Congressman Anago. It addressed the marginal farmers, yung 2 hectares and below. Di ba? Ngayon, ang ginawa ho natin, thanks to you, ang ginawa natin dyan, we engage with the NMIC kasi mahusay yung CDA chairman si Chairman Revendedaro, and we're working through the
Hindi ba pinaltan ng CDA chairman? Sino ba yung pinaltan? Parang siya.
bago na ba? Anyway, but
Alam mo sa DA, pag magaling, pinapaltan.
pero ito yung focus nga namin because we had that model in Isabela, which we would like to roll out as a successful proof of concept. Ang nangyari ho natin dito, na-capacitate natin already as much as 8,000 of those marginal farmers.
Pero alam mo ba, Iho,
depositors of BP.
sa lahat ng region, sa Philippines, may magagaling na co-op. Kasi kami, every year, hinahanap namin yung pinakamagagaling na co-op, pinepremyuhan namin. We choose 20 a year. Magugulat ka sa Pilipinas, ang daming magaling. Kaya kung gusto mo ng listahan, isa-isahin mo na yun na lang ang trabahuhin nyo kasi ang gagaling nila. Alam mo ba ang mga member nila, 200,000 ang isang co-op? 200,000.
You know, Madam Senator, that's exactly right. And that's what we're focusing on our credit evaluation.
Nandito ngayon yung isa Nandito ngayon yung sa Ilocos Sur. Si Divina, magsalita ka iha. Magaling yan. Di ba?
Kliyente na ho namin yan. Kliyente ho namin. Kaya maganda ho yung mga co-op, wholly owned by the farmers, because pauutangin natin yung mga co-op so they can borrow the farm equipment, all of those things so that they will take care of that, they'll professionally manage it, and they can scale the farm productivity amongst the thousands of farmers that they have. Kaya kami sa DBP, yan ho ang focus natin.
Pero lahat ng region may ganyan, maraming ganyan. Ibibigay ko sa iyo listahan. Ang dami nila, ang gagaling nila.
Madam Chair?
We would appreciate that.
Madam Chair?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Siguro maganda hong malaman dun sa mga members ba ng cooperatives kung ilan doon ang may bank account. Siguro magandang
Baka nasa cooperative ang bank account tingin ko.
Alam mo,
yung individual members ho nila, baka magandang i-encourage mag-open ng
Yes.
bank account kung wala
Yeah.
pa. Pero
If I
magandang
may
malaman
respond,
kung may ganun silang programa.
if I may respond, Senator Nancy, that's all part of that campaign. Gaya sinabi ko sa Isabela, and we're working on several. They started out with the e-wallet of Paymaya. That's why we also engaged a fintech. You know, usually banks are disturbed by the fintech. Pero kami sa DBP, we see the fintech as an enabler. Kaya ginamit ho namin muna yung e-wallet because walang walang requirement. So they accept what the RCEP gives to them, and so we have a record on who they are and how much they have. And I'd like to think that many of these people are now depositors of DBP because we have an account that is zero balance, which the NMIC, as part of our partnership, must monitor. Kasi sabi namin sa NMIC, you guys gotta behave, okay? And then we will fund you a lot more for more tractors, irrigation, even solar technology if they want. You know, we have service providers that are just willing to sell syempre naman their services. And they were saying, yes, and we'd like to capacitate our agriculture in this way by focusing on scale and easier to monitor. Kaya tama ang sabi nga ni Madam Chair, Senator Cynthia, you'd like to have those engagements easier to monitor. You are able to achieve scale. More farmers now will be financially included. Kaya nga po, sa pagsasalamat namin kay Senator Cynthia for the RCEP and the rice, gusto ko rin sabihin sa kanya, maganda rin ho yan para sa coco.
Meron kayo sa coco. Meron din kayo sa coco. Basahin mo yung coco. Nandun na naman kayo, DBP and Land Bank, di ba?
Okay, here's another proof of concept that we have. Pero ito naman, daet sa Camarines. There is a large exporter of cocoa products. It's called Magnacron, okay? And I'm very excited about this because ang mga pwede nilang supply chain are all those coconut farmers.
Yeah.
So this company is 100% exporter. So right away, may off-taker na yung mga farmers. So ang mangyayari ho dyan, di pa uutang natin yung Magnacron. Pautangin din ng DBP yung farmer cooperative, di ba? To get all of the equipment and productivity implements. So it will sustain the farmers.
Namimigay tayo ng equipment, hindi sila kailangang umutang. Baka yung some others, pero lahat ang beneficiary ng mechanization are co-ops.
Right. Pero
hindi ibibigay lang sa LGU para pag yung bayan ay walang co-op. Nakalagay sa batas yun.
Hindi ko I agree, hindi ko na maisa up.
Lahat ng batas ko ganun. Ang bibigyan ay co-op. Pag walang co-op at saka lang ibibigay sa LGU. Kasi mas co-op mas sila, mas related sila sa farmer, nakaka-relate sila sa farmer kaysa LGU. Ang LGU mahilig sa infra, hindi mahilig sa farming.
Yes.
So unless walang co-op sa bayan.
Yes.
Bibigay sa LGU, wala tayong choice, di ba? Doon nga sa Aimee, Senator Aimee, doon nga sa Benguet ba yun? Na Mountain Province, ayaw tanggapin ng mayor. Walang co-op, ayaw tanggapin ng mayor. Binigay sa barangay captain. Sus Marias.
No, hirap na po. That's nga lang.
Nagagalit nga ako, ba't ibibigay naman sa barangay captain? Sobrang baba naman noon, di ba?
Well,
ba't hindi naman ayaw tanggapin ng mayor? Walang co-op.
But we can also, it depends on the relationship po, Senator Cynthia. We also have very good tie-ups with LGUs that are into farm to market, which is also supporting the farm. So it
Eh
really
kaso
will
nga
depend.
ito ayaw tanggapin ng mayor.
Kaya
Sana
kailangan
bigyan
talaga
naman ng...
piliin.
Oo.
Ibang usapan na po yan pero hindi ko matatanggal
Be
yung pagkabang
You'll be
hindi ko na
surprised. Sabi ko, sana hindi na binigyan ko ayaw tanggapin ng mayor. Parusahan na yun. Bakit na hindi tatanggapin for the benefit of his farmers, di ba? Kasi
bigay
mas
na lang
may-
ho niyo sa bigay
iba.
na lang ho niyo sa DBP. Meron kaming DBP leasing. Bigay na lang ho niyo sa amin. Kami na lang
Dami-dami. Ibigay sa ibang bayan. Ako hindi ko na ibigay kung ayaw tanggapin ng mayor.
Pasensya na, Senator. Alam mo, hindi ko maalis yung pagkabangkero ko. Kailangan naman kumita ho yung DBP, di ba?
Pamigay ito pamigay. Oo.
Madam Chair,
May
Yes.
financial
Madam
inclusion
Chair,
tayo.
can I be recognized? This is Divina Kemi of the Nueva
yeah,
Segovia
siya,
Consortium of Cooperatives. of Region
Kliyente
1.
ka daw ng DBP. Kliyente
Good
ka ba ng
Hainon,
DBP?
Senator. Good Hainon, Senator Aimee and Senator Nancy Binay. So thank you so much for the recognition that we are working
One of the
cooperatively in
best.
the region.
Ikaw ba, kliyente ka ng DBP? Kliyente ka ba ng DBP?
Kliyente mo ng DBP when I asked something about doon sa pagbaba ng bayanihan fund doon sa RCEP, I requested in your office na ibaba from 2.5 to 2% or 1.5. But the recent, when I had the discussion with the representative in the area, it goes to 3.5 dahil daw sa dock stamp. If you can lower down that into 1.5, considering that we're really helping the farmers in the barangay remote area, then even the lockdown, we are going to the barangay to buy the palay so that we can supply in the local area, Madam Chair.
Ano yung pinautang sa'yo,
Thank you so
RCEP?
much.
Yung pinautang ba sa'yo, RCEP?
Hindi RCEP.
That's the bayanihan palay bayanihan program, ma'am.
Ang RCEP, ang ano lang doon, hindi ba 2% lang ang RCEP? Kasi pera yun ng gobyerno, hindi nyo naman pera yun, service charge lang kayo, di ba?
That's right.
Pag RCEP,
Mag-iiba sa 2.5, ma'am.
ba't yung bayanihan, di ba pera din yun ng gobyerno? Dapat 2% lang.
Ganito yun
Magiging 2% na lang. I-amend natin, sir, yung MOA. Yung policy.
Ano mo, ando dito yung BSP kailangan mo magbayad ng dock stamps. Okay? And now, the interest rate subsidy.
Magbabayad ng dock stamps yung bayanihan. Kaya nyo binigay yon dahil naghihirap ang mga tao because of COVID. May babayaran pa ng dock stamps yun? Ano ba yun?
We're relending this to them po. Hindi naman RCEP po ito So,
hindi, bayanihan daw Bayanihan Bayanihan
Bayanihan. Hindi siya bayanihan.
bayanihan. Bayanihan. Iba ho
hindi ba yung bayanihan 1 and bayanihan 2? Kasi yung bayanihan 1.
Bayanihan fund of the ACPC and DBP, Senator. But I do not know if this is the source is RCEP.
Kasi yung DA, gusto pa niya ng ACPC. Hindi pa ibigay sa land bank.
Iba siya, ma'am. Iba siya.
Ako, sinasabi ko yan dyan sa ACPC Alam mo, nung ang nagpapalend ng DA, wala nagbabayad. Kaya ayoko na ang department ang magpapalend kasi hindi nagbabayad ang mga pinauutang. Tapos pag tinanong namin sa mga pinautang, bakit tayo kayong magbayad? Naglagay ho kami ng 30% Yun ang sagot sa amin. I mean, let's be frank about it. Kaya ako, nung nire-write ko yung ASEF, tinanggal ko yung pupunta sa government Binigay ko sa Land Bank at DBP Kasi, ano ba yun? Pinagsasabi sila ng mga umutang sa kanila, nagpalagay sila ng 30%. Tapos, yung 8 billion na pautang, ang nagbayad, 7%. Nawala ang iba.
Ma'am, may I respond?
Oh,
May I respond, ma'am? Jocelyn Bajola.
ikaw ba ACPC?
Opo, ma'am.
Oh.
Ma'am,
Kaya palagi ko sinasabi yan sa iyo, ayoko nang madidinig na ichichismis nung naglo-loan sa government na institutions na naglagay sila kaya ayaw nila magbayad.
Never naman po, ma'am, hinandle ng ACPC yung ASEF. At saka ngayon po, binibigay
Sino
po
nag-handle ng ASEP nung araw?
DA po, DA.
Oo nga, hindi ba kayo
Pero
ang
hindi-
financial
hindi po.
arm ng ACPC, ng
Ah,
DA?
pero hindi po hinawakan ng ACPC ang ASEF.
O sino
Pero ngayon,
naghawak?
DA nga po.
Ang laki-laki ng DA, kaya ayoko na nga niya mga
Labas po sa
sasabihin
ACPC.
ibibigay sa DA eh. Ipagtuturo-turoan ka sa DA kung sino naghawak ng pera eh. Oh, nawala si pera, hindi mo malaman kung sino hahanapin mo. Kaya hindi ba yun ang sinasabi ko sa Central Bank? Tigilan nyo ako dyan na ang pera ibibigay tapos hindi nakalista kung kanino binigay. Ibigay nyo kung kanino nakalista para pag hinahanap ang pera, alam mo yung agency na pinagbigyan, di ba? Ilagay sa batas yun. Lahat ng batas ko may ganun. So pag nawala si pera, alam mo kung sino hahanapin. Kasi katulad mo, sasabihin mo sa akin, DA ho nag-handle. Sino sa DA? Napakalaki ng DA.
Excuse po, Yusek Lavinia po. Ma'am, Madam Chair, Yusek Lavinia. When
Okay.
2016 po, the old ASEP po, hindi ko po alam sino yung nag-handle before, pero nung pumasok na ng 2016-2017, nung lumabas na ho yung inyong batas, kami lang gumawa ng IRR, so we don't know about the 8 billion. So
Kaya ko nga ginanon yung batas na wala yung 8 billion eh. Tapos sasabihin nila hindi daw ACPC nag-handle. Sino? Miski sino tanungin ko kayo, wala makasabi sa akin sino nag-handle ng 8 billion sa DA. Walang makasalita. Kaya next time, huwag tayo gagawa ng batas na hindi nakasulat kung kanino binigay yung pera. Para pag hinahanap natin yung pera, we don't have to ask them. It's written on the law. Diba? Yun ang sinasabi ko sa BSP. Na we should be very specific. Kasi, di ba, Senator Amy, Senator Binay, ang dami nang nag-privilege speech sa Senate na sinasabi nila, pinapalitan yung IRR, ng IRR yung batas, di ba? Iba nakasulat sa batas, iba yung IRR. Kasi yung gumawa ng IRR, gusto niya ibigay sa kanya ang power kesa doon sa sinabi ng batas, di ba? Kaya ngayon, wala na tayong IRR. Yung ating batas siyang IRR para hindi nababago. Diba? Kaya ayoko na niyang mga big na committee na ganyan. Isulat niyo kung kanino niyo ibibigay ang pera. Para pag hinanap namin yung pera, mahahanap namin. Tingnan mo ngayon, hinahanap natin na 8 billion. Wala nang umamin kung sino nagpautang ng 8 billion na nawala. Oh. That's the problem. Diba? Ano din yung 8 billion? Malaki yun. Diba?
Madam Chair, Senator Cynthia,
Oo.
kaya bigay na lang nyo sa Land Bank at saka yung DBP yung pera.
Hindi ba palaging nasa inyo? Hindi mo napupuna? Katakot-takot na pera ang binibigay namin sa inyo? Kasi
Dito sa
kayo,
bater.
Kasi kayo is supervised by BSP. So, kailangan sabihin nyo kung kanino nyo pinahiram ang pera. Yun, nawala
Hindi, kaya nga po, doon sa position paper namin, I would just like to emphasize, kasi there are many commonalities, yung section po about setting up the fund that could be handled by Land Bank and DBP. So instead of the banks paying their penalties, and napakalaki ho to, and the money doesn't go back to them, they go into this fund, di ba? Tapos may konting
Hindi.
kita po yung fund natin.
Hindi.
And then we can lend that. We can support the agricultural industry with that kind of fund, so that the other banks will not consider it as a penalty, but as an earning fund, and they can earn some money out of that. Meantime, DBP and Land Bank can use that other than a national appropriation.
Ayaw nga natin na malaki yung penalty kasi ibig sabihin pag maliit ang penalty, nagpautang sila sa agriculture, di ba? Di ba yun ang meaning noon? Gusto nga
Sige,
natin, kaya tayo nag-a-amendment ngayon na to enable the banks to lend the money para wala silang penalty. Yun ang ano natin. Ngayon,
No,
if ever
right.
may penalty,
Kaya pala noon.
teka, makinig muna kayo. If ever may penalty, ilagay natin definitely saan pupunta yung penalty. Kasi ngayon, pumupunta
Sa
sa
fund.
Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation at saka sa Phil Guarantee. Doon pumupunta. Ngayon, ayaw nyo ba na pumunta sa Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation or sa Phil Guarantee? Kasi kung ayaw nyo, di ilalagay natin kung saan pupunta. Pero hindi pwede na ibibigay natin to somebody and siya magmamanage. No. Ilagay natin kung saan gagamitin yung pera. Diba? Anong
Comment.
government
Comment.
agency ang gagamit ng pera to achieve what we want to achieve, 'di ba? Yun ang sinasabi ko. Comment, yes.
Comment, ma'am. Yung government agency na yan will be DBP and Land Bank managing that fund. And that, so that's where the so-called penalty will come in.
Self-serving yan. Self-serving yan. Tingnan natin ang opinion ng lahat at saka pumili tayo kung saan natin dadalhin. Hindi pwede na
Okay.
sasabihin mo sa'yo ibibigay.
No, I have...
Oo, yeah.
Okay,
Kasi
okay, Senator.
actually, yung Agri-Agra, ang ile-lend sa agriculture, yung mismong 25%. Yung penalty, it's to achieve certain things para maging successful yung Agri-Agra. 'Di ba? Yun ang ang usapan natin.
Well, yes, ma'am, but no doubt about that. No doubt about that. Now,
So,
I
ang sabi nila, dalhin daw sa capacity building. Dalhin daw sa
Yes.
organization ng cooperative.
Yes, ma'am.
Kasi
That's,
yun ang mangungutang. Dalhin
Yes,
daw doon. Doon ba dadalhin lahat ng pera o may iba pa kayong... Kasi ngayon, din binibigay sa Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation at sa Phil Guarantee. Tatanggalin ba natin yung dalawang yon o magdadagdag lang tayo? That's the question. Diba?
well, I think you've covered that in your own Senate bill. I think section 12.
Ako, ayoko na sana palitan tong Agri-Agra kasi wala akong makitang magandang kaya ako kayo kinakausap ngayon, pinipilit ako ng PLL o naihir ko to, baka daw may makita akong maganda kasi kaya ako hindi sinusulat yung batas ko, wala akong makitang maganda. So naghahanap ako sa hearing natin na magandang gagawin para mag-succeed yung Agri-Agra. Yun ang ating reason ngayon. Oo. So nakikinig ako sa inyo para makita ko kung sa mga sasabihin nyo may makita akong maganda na ipapalit doon sa existing Agri-Agra para mas better yung Agri-Agra law natin. Kaya
Yes,
tayo
ma'am.
nag-hearing ngayon. Kasi so far, yung mga nabasa ko, hindi ko masyado nagagandahan. So naghahanap ako ng magagandang gagawin para maganda yung batas natin. Kasi kung hindi tayo makakagawa ng magandang batas, wag na tayong gumawa ng batas. Diba? Kasi kung pareho din ang dati, wag na lang tayong mag-amend. Mahirap din mag-amend. I have to go to the floor and defend it. If it's not good, I cannot defend it. Alam mo naman yung mga senador, mahirap ding i-defend ng bill dyan. Oo. So,
That's why I'm pushing, Senator, that you please proceed with your 30% in the form of credit to cooperatives for capacitating purpose. That I believe in
hindi
my
naman credit
experience
to
is very
capacitate.
relevant.
Hindi credit yung to capacitate. Ang ibig sabihin ng to capacitate, magkagasta ka to capacitate. Budget to capacitate. That means magbibigay ka ng pera para may mag-form ng mga cooperative, lalo na sa Agra na walang masyadong cooperative. Buti sa Agri, marami. Sa Agra, wala. And then, to sponsor training ng mga cooperative na yon para pag sila hininga ng requirement ng bangko, marunong sila kasi nag-aral sila on how to prepare those requirements and nakakaintindi sila ng financial management. Yung ganun ba? Yun ang hinihingi nila na ilagay na pagdadalhan ng part of the ano. Pero I would say na wag din natin tanggalin yung Philippine Crop Insurance, nakakatulong din yun. Oo.
No, that's for sure.
We'll see. Oo.
Kasi ang crop,
Philippine Crop Insurance kasi kung masira sila ng ano tawag doon ng calamity, may pambayad sila sa loan. Kasi makakakolekta sila sa Philippine Crop Insurance, di ba?
yes. Pero isang dapat
Pwedeng beneficiary yung nag-loan sa kanila ng kanilang Philippine Crop Insurance para yung nag-loan ang mag-claim sa Philippine Crop Insurance, ba? Parang yun ang pang support dun sa loan na may insurance. 'Di ba tayo pag nag-loan tayo na personal, pinakukuha tayo ng insurance para pag bigla tayo namatay, yung insurance natin na magbabayad ng loan natin. Parang gano'n, 'di ba?
Yes, like an MRI.
MRI. Yung ganon. Para yung Philippine Crop Insurance, okay din yun in that case, di ba? Tayo nga, pinakukuha tayo ng insurance. Hindi nakukuha ang farmer na insurance. Philippine Crop Insurance will cover, di ba?
Right. That's right.
Yun. So, yun ang mga natin. Kaya kasi tayo naandito para maghanap ng mga bagay na makaka-improve dun sa ating Agri-Agra law, di ba? Yung pakikinggan natin lahat ng suggestion, tapos pipili tayo para include natin doon sa Agri-Agra law natin. So, okay yun.
But, okay, if I may say, Senator, so those penalties that we are collecting, perhaps 75% will go to capacity building as you are defining, 35% for titling, and parcelization.
No, meron
35%.
program ngayon ng DAR.
Sarili yun.
May sariling program yon, binigyan sila ng World Bank.
World Bank has
program. Oo, they will
okay.
split their CLOA for the next 3 years. Meron na silang budget, 'di ba? 20 billion, 'di ba? Parang 20
Yes, thank
plus
you.
billion. Binigay yun ng World Bank sa DAR para yung mga collective CLOA nila ma-split nila para para ma-assign na doon sa mga tao yung kanila talagang titulo or CLOA.
Yeah, thank you. That is very important for banks.
Yun. But that will take 3 years. So, matagal pa yun. So, in the meantime, gusto nyo mag-amend ng Agri-Agra, ano gagawin natin para mas okay? Diba? Oo. Yun ang So, maybe we will listen na to the private banks. Oo.
Thank you.
Private banks. Maybe yung president ng Bankers Association of the Philippines, kanina ka pa dyan ha? Maybe you should share your opinion, di ba?
Marami pong salamat, Senator Villar.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. This is...
Sino yun?
Madam Chair, this is Yusek Emi Padilla of the Department of Agrarian Reform po. Pwede po ba kaming makapag-comment? Madam Chair.
Mr. Bankers Association.
Hello?
Mr. Wick. Pabayaan mo muna yung Bankers Association, natawag ko na nawawala kasi kayo
So, thank you so much, Senator Villar, Senator Binay, Senator Marcos, and those in the meeting today. We express our sincere thanks for the opportunity to participate in this virtual hearing and submit our industry position on several congressional bills and resolutions now pending in your committee, aiming to strengthen the financing system for agricultural fisheries and rural developments or development in the Philippines, namely Senate Bills number 1038, 1336, 1352, 1361, 1585, 1740 and 1924, Senate Resolution number 19, and House Bill number 6134. We applaud the Senate for recognizing the profound importance of this proposed legislation for the welfare of the agriculture and fishery sector and their significant impact on the strength and sustainability of the banking system. The banking industry has always been clear and upfront in its position vis-a-vis mandated lending in all of its forms and has specifically provided in Republic Act number 10000 or the Agra Reform Credit Act of 2009, Republic Act number 9501 or the Magna Carta for Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises, and Republic Act number 11293 or the Philippine Innovation Act. We believe that mandated lending is an outdated vision of the financial inclusion, producing instead the opposite outcomes of its intended noble objectives. No doubt our member universal and commercial banks have similar, very strong position on the issue. However, the BAP, as well as our members, understand that a significant number of Filipinos are dependent on agriculture for their livelihood and are firmly behind the government's goals to help the sector become vibrant and support the development agenda of food security. This matters to us more now during the pandemic as well as during normal times. As such, we now respectfully present to you our recommendations as how the banking sector can contribute to rural agriculture and fisheries development while optimizing the opportunities for overall economic growth. We aim to facilitate credit to the countryside via all effective modes, as well as raise the eligibility and capacity of agricultural and fisheries beneficiaries to access credit. Our recommendations to achieve these goals are the following. Institution of an agricultural, fisheries, and rural development financing system. The primary goal of the system will be to improve the welfare, competitiveness, income, and productivity of rural. Covered activities under RA number 10000. The new law should include economic activities benefiting the rural communities such as, but not limited to, the following: off-farm and fishery activities, agricultural mechanization and modernization, agri-tourism, green finance projects, marketing, processing, distribution and storage of agricultural and fishery commodities, public rural infrastructure and programs to address the developmental needs of rural communities, projects to promote the livelihood, skills enhancement, and other capacity building activities of the rural community beneficiaries, and all other activities consistent or analogous to the one cited. Consolidation. Third is the consolidation of the 25% credit quota. The distinction between agriculture and agrarian credit allocation is removed and consolidated at 25% of the total allowable funds of the banking institution. Fourth, incentivize agrarian reform credit. The incentive is intended to promote credit to agrarian reform beneficiaries, agrarian reform communities, and other related priority sectors by recognizing such compliance at 10 times the outstanding amount of the extended credit. Fifth, organization of a finance and capacity building policy council. A policy council to formulate finance and capacity building programs shall be formed with representations from the public, private, and rural sectors. The general objective is to improve and enhance the bankability of the agricultural and fisheries beneficiaries. Sixth, creation of a special fund for the capacity building programs. The operations and programs of the Policy Council will be financed by a special fund created for the purpose. The initial amount of the special fund will be 10 billion composed of penalties due from banks on their non-compliance or undercompliance collected after the effectivity of the new law. Any shortfall will be advanced by the banks for a maximum cumulative amount of 2 billion chargeable against future penalties under the law. The shortfall contribution of the banks will be counted at 5 times the amount contributed against future penalties. The same will not form part of the current compliance. 7th, sunset provision for the mandatory credit quota. The provisions related to the mandatory credit quota under the new law will cease to have effect 10 years or earlier from effectivity of said law. We submit all of these recommendations for the consideration of the committee, and we stand available to further explain our proposals. We pray that Congress, together with the BSP and the banking industry, will be able to reach a collective agreement on the best way forward to address the issues that ails the agriculture and fisheries sector and provide an environment for the banking sector to effectively contribute in these efforts. Yan po ang aming rekomendasyon. Yung number 1, institution of an agricultural, fisheries, and rural development financing system. Gusto natin masigurado na mapapalago natin ang productivity ng ating mga farmers. Lahat ho yan ngayon, nag-i-exist ho yan. Dito sa, meron na tayong ACPC, Agriculture Credit Policy Council. Actually, number 1, number 5, which is Organization of a Finance and Capacity Building Policy Council, okay? At number 6 ay magkakadikit. Kasi yung Policy Council na nire-recommenda natin, so imagine nyo, number 1, palakasin natin ng mga farmers at fisheries natin. Number 5, Organization of a Finance and Capacity Building Policy Council to formulate finance and capacity building programs. Dito na ho ngayon papasok ang mga iba-ibang rekomendasyon. Alam po ninyo, kung titignan ho natin bakit ang ating mga 5-6 ay nagsasucceed na magpahiram sa ating mga farmers, because they can communicate to each other. Una, walang papeles na kinakailangan. Wala rin naman naghahanap sa kanila ng papeles. Wala rin naman isasubmit ng mga ID yung mga farmers. Wala rin naman nire-require silang mga ID. Ang business model nila ay ibang-iba sa business model ng mga bangko. Ang business model nila, ang mga taong kanilang credit officers ay naglalakad araw-araw, tinitignan kung sino ang mga magsasaka, tinitignan kung sino ang mangingisda, tinitignan kung sino ang kumikita, at dito nila ginagawang basihan ang kanilang credit policies. Ay hindi ho uubra yan sa mandato ng bangko. Ibang-iba ho ang re-require sa aming mga bangko. Kaya yan ho ang kailangan ng Organization of a Finance and Capacity Building Policy Council. Pag meron na ho tayo niyan, ito ho yung sinasabi namin, creation of a special fund for the capacity building programs. Kung ang rekomendasyon nila ay gumawa ng paraan na payagan ng mga bangko or other financial institutions to behave like the 5-6 and act and lend in the same format, diyan natin mararadicalize yan. Ako ho ay marami ng pinag-aralan ng mga paraan ng pagpapairam. Meron akong isang kliyente dyan sa Nueva Ecija na nagtataka ako, nung nasa foreign bank pa ako, tinatanong sa akin na kung pwede ko raw gawa ng capital market transaction. Kinausap ko yung may-ari dahil nagtataka ako, yung kanyang negosyo ay katulad ng pagpapahiram dito sa mga magsasaka at ang mga mahihirap, ngunit ang kanyang past due rate ay napakababa. Minus industry at it's only around 0.5%. Nung aking binusisi,
hindi, yung isa, yung DAR, tapos yan.
Hindi ho talaga niya ang inyong pamamaraan ng pagbangko. Kasi ang aking credit officer ay yung mga taong nandoon sa tindahan na naka-standby. Tinitignan nila kung sino ang mandato ko sa kanila. Ito mga taong to sa barangay mo, pinahiram ko, ikutin mo araw-araw, tignan mo kung nasaan, kung nakatira sila roon, puntahan mo sa tindahan, tignan mo kung may utang, tignan mo kung nagbabayad at sabihin mo sa akin kung ito ay may mga ginagawang mga bagay na hindi natin ikakatuwa katulad ng pagsusugal, nagbabayad, naglalasing para hindi na natin pahiramin. Yan ho, iba-ibang, napaka-ibang credit, program ho yan. Now,
Pero ang ano naman doon, malaki interest noon. Kayo, mababa interest nyo. So, may kapalit. Kung mai-explain lang sa mga farmer na pwedeng umutang sa inyo ng mura, doon napakamahal. Kasi with the money they're paying, yung 5-6, hindi na sila kikita sa kanilang negosyo.
Meron ho tayong mga programa ngayon na ginagawa. Meron ho kasabayan ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Una, sana ma-fast track yung national ID. Kasi national ID will allow us now to do credit scoring. Yung credit scoring sa retail market will differentiate a farmer or a fisherman or anyone who's in the agricultural sector who really religiously pays his obligation as opposed to a businessman who's delinquent. Napakaganda hong tulong ho sa amin yan. Kaya nga ho, kung ma-fast track ho natin yung credit scoring, makakatulong ho yan. At yung credit scoring, malaking bagay ho na may gagawa niya yung national ID. Kung hindi ho ma-fast track yung national ID, maghahanap ho kami ng ibang paraan para namin magawa yan. But one thing is certain, yan ho ang magpapababa ng interest rate nila. Kasi ang taong maganda ang kredito ay pag-aagawa ng bawat mga bangko. Yan ang hinahanap namin. Napakalaking bagay ho para sa amin na magkaroon ng oportunidad para masilbihan yan. Tama ho yung statistics ninyo. Ha? Yung 72 million Filipinos, 51.6 million ang walang bank account. Ngayon, kung baguhin itong council, itong nire-recommenda naming capacity building council, kayong mga bangko, pabayaan ko kayo mag-open ng account. Tignan natin kung walang mga minimum requirement, yung mga dokumento ninyo, paliwanag mo na lang sa akin, picturean mo na lang kung paano. At maging napakadali. Ika nga, when we talk about banking, it's customer experience. But maybe it's about time that the customer experience should not be just focused on the target customers of the banks, but for these people. Make it very easy for them to embrace the banks. Because it is our mandate to be able to service that 51.6 million Filipinos that are unbanked. And maybe the business model that we have is no longer attuned with what the market is doing. Because one thing is certain, if the banks are unable to lend them and the money lenders or the usurious lenders are doing it for them, then that clearly demonstrates that the other business model is working. I hope that I'm able to share verbatim the position of the banking industry. And I have with me my colleagues in the Bankers Association of the Philippines. I have Mr. Hans Sikat with me, Mr. Ben Castillo, the Managing Director. Hans, Ben, anything you would like to add?
Good afternoon, President Wick. Good afternoon, Chairman Villar. May I just add one thing, maybe just to augment what your President Wick was saying? And the item to add really is just that in terms of the suggestion of expanded and covered activities, I think you've seen, and it was mentioned, this issue about helping green projects and green finance. That's something very popular right now, sustainable finance, ESG. And we just want to note that the Philippine SEC has already come out with guidelines for this, and which are quite similar to ASEAN guidelines. And I think as we can group many activities under the green financing program as well as ESG programs, this can obviously incentivize banks to also provide financing for activities that they can group together that will qualify. That's all, Madam Chair, which I wanted to add.
Okay. I think Senator Amy has a question.
No, Madam Chair, we made mention of the green financing, and while we're at it, the sustainable and resilient projects, of course. In addition, I think the new normal also encompasses financing for digitization and anyone who is going to embark on e-businesses, on automation, and so on. And finally, there should be financing for wellness, given the threat that COVID has posed, for companies that are undertaking wellness programs for employees and their communities. So we wanted to enjoin the finance sector to keep in mind the new normal. There will be an end to this pandemic, but the notion of building back better also encompasses financing. Thank you.
So that will, my question is, we will include that in the Agri-Agra law, those kind of financing.
Perhaps.
Are we including that in the Agri-Agra law?
Is that possible po na may green, may digitized at saka yung mga
I think digitized is very okay kasi yung kind of marketing natin nga, digital natin, di ba? Yung green naman, pwede yung hanapin yun.
Nagbebenta po kami ng gulay ngayon nagbebenta po kami ng gulay at saka punong kahoy sa online eh.
Online.
Malaking bagay. So, kailangan tulungan ng mga farmers na mag-upload ng platform, tapos mag-Wi-Fi, hindi sila marunong.
I think yung wellness can come sa farm tourism, di ba?
Yung wellness, malaking bagay po also kasi sa farm tourism.
Oo, yun.
Yes. At saka din sa mga co-op that are bumibili ng vaccine or tumutulong sa immunization, yun po.
So maybe we can include that. We will just specify.
Thank you.
Kasi nag-issue na rin ng central bank, winiden nila yung what you can lend to eh. So maybe in the amendment of the Agri-Agra law, we will put that into the law para permanent, di ba? Kasi yung
mas maganda po.
BSP temporary yan, whereas if it's in the law, then more or less that's permanent, di ba? Unless amended, di ba? Oo. So we will include that in the law para mas widen. Yun ang palagi nilang widen the extent of what you can lend out to a wide. Kasi ibang-iba ngayon ng economy based sa dati. Dati yung digital hindi masyadong applicable sa agriculture, but now it is because the marketing of agriculture is all digital na, di ba?
We're all selling po online, but they don't have computers, they have no Wi-Fi, and all that stuff. They need that. And also the wellness po, kasi yung mga farmers talagang walang pakialam eh. Akala mo talagang hindi tatamaan, lahat sila invincible eh. So sana
I'm very bothered kasi ako, maraming sumusulat sa akin, nagpapa-refer sa hospital na may sakit. I'm bothered by that, ang dami-daming sulat na less than 30 years old, may chronic kidney disease.
Grabe nga eh.
Bakit? Hindi ba yung kanilang kind of na kinakain nila?
Yun na nga, that's why
dapat turuan sa eskwelahan kung ano kakainin.
Turuan ng wellness eh. At saka,
kasi, I mean, I'm not surprised if a 50-year-old would have chronic kidney disease, but between 20 and 30, sobra na yun. Diba? Bata-bata pa noon.
That's why we're encouraging the co-ops po to put up a small clinic and the roving medical team. Pero kailangan rin nila ng pera kasi they need also
pero ang public school, 'di ba, sa kanilang teaching, 'di ba?
Ayun,
sa public school natin, 'di ba, dapat may course doon. 'Di ba?
Yes. I wanted to ask po, since Mr. Hansikat is here, the rest of the world is decarbonizing. This is my own advocacy. The rest of the world is decarbonizing, but DOE seems to be adding more and more coal plants. Can we do something in the banking sector to diminish the funds available for financing coal?
Hi, Senator Amy.
Hi.
Well, I think first of all, many of the banks are already, let's call it, reducing their exposure to the carbon sector, and in fact are increasing their relative exposure to
Clean
let's call it the green
energy.
sector,
Yes,
clean
that's
energy,
right.
renewables. So
We really need
I think we're very
financing.
much with you on that one. Obviously, there are differences in individual banks how fast they can do it because of certain, let's call it,
Sure.
contracts. But I think as you see more and more of the not just the lending activity, but even the equivalent of the capacity building, we're helping a lot of firms, for example, form their own green and sustainable finance plans. So you can see that the banking sector in general is also trying to assist a lot of operations in that one. And I think, as you've seen, even in the latest ADB meeting, wherein this was the main
Yes.
focus.
That's
So we're, as a group, we are pretty much bought into, I guess, your advocacy. So
Oh, that's
hopefully
great.
here.
So the financing sector is on board. It's only DOE that we have to convince. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll go to the we'll go now to the parang gusto ng DAR magsalita. So we'll give a chance to DAR because this is their main they have the main problem. So we call on the Department of Agrarian Reform. Okay. Nasaan? Department of Agrarian Reform.
Madam Chair, magandang hapon
Yes.
po sa ating lahat. Madam Chair, ating pong nanay ng Department of Agrarian Reform.
Yes.
This is Yusek Amy. Opo. Magalong ko po na sinususog na sana palakasin po natin. Tulad ng sinabi ni Senator.
There's something wrong. There's something wrong with your May something wrong with your online mo. Iha, hindi siya ka maintindihan. Iha, hindi ka maintindihan. Iha, there's something with your line. Ay, sus. Tawagan nila. I-ano mo na lang yan. I-print mo yan, ha?
Opo.
Iha, there's something with your line.
Nasa labas po kasi.
Baka ibigay mo na lang yung report mo in writing sa committee kasi hindi ka maintindihan eh.
Hindi ako marinig eh.
Hindi.
May problema po yung aming linya, Sen.
Kaya nga. Maybe we can call on field guarantee tapos ayusin mo yung linya mo mamaya kung okay ka na tsaka ka magsalita.
Okay.
Ha? Okay, sige. We'll call
Just
on
submit
field
our position
guarantee.
paper. Hindi po ako maintindihan eh.
Okay,
Thank you
sige.
po, intindihan. May problema po.
Hindi.
Thank you po.
Hindi maintindihan.
Thank you.
Okay. So, field guarantee. Nasaan ang field guarantee?
Good afternoon po, Madam Chair, Senator Marcos and Senator Binay, and to everyone. This is Emmanuel Torres po, the Senior Vice President for Agriculture Guarantee Group of Field Guarantee. So on behalf of our President, Alberto E. Pascual, I would like to thank this committee for inviting us to present the status report of AGFP. Okay. Thank you. Since Field Guarantee took over the administration of AGFP 20 months ago, we have already issued guarantee cover to 121,904 loan transactions of 103,692 small farmers and fishers. Total guaranteed loans for the last 20 months reached 8.724 billion. On a cumulative basis,
Iho, hindi mabasa yung report mo.
Can you,
ayusin mo yung report mo.
Nababasa na po?
Oo.
Okay na ba screen? So on a cumulative basis, from 2008, this was the year AGFP was established, up to April 30, 2021, AGFP's total guaranteed loans amounted to 64.2 billion pesos, with 1.271 million total transactions guaranteed and benefiting 727,676 small farmers and fishers borrowers. The seed fund of 5.1 billion, consisting of contributions from 11 GOCCs, totaling 483,644,900, and the remitted penalties collected by BSP from banks non-compliance or under-compliance with the Agri-Agra law in the aggregate amount of 4,631,472,200.63 remains intact up to today. So what we used po to pay off guarantee claims and answer for the operating expenses and some capital expenditures were income generated from the investment of the seed fund and the minimal amount of guarantee fees collected from lending institutions that have been participating in the program.
Ano ba yung initial mo na amount? Seed fund, magkano yon?
Ang initial po is yung 483 million na contribution po ng 11 GOCCs. At saka po later, yung pumasok po yung 4 billion contributed by the national government.
Ilang taon yung pumasok yung 4.6 billion? Kasi every year you get 45% of the di ba?
Opo.
45% of the
of the penalty po.
Of penalty, sabi nila on the average 2 billion yung penalty. So kung 45% ka noon, a little less than 1 billion ang nakukuha mo every year. Tama ba yon?
Hindi po. Ang total po na nakuha namin from 2008 up to 2017 po.
Bakit 2008? Kala ko napasa to 2009.
Yung pong AO225-A, 2008 po yun.
Nakuha mo lang 4.6?
4.6 po ang total, yes po.
Ba't maliit?
Iba-iba po kasi yung nare-remit na penalty. So, ang last remittance
can you give us your schedule of remittance? Kasi may question din dun sa dun sa Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation, pareho kayo na remittance, pero parang walang pinakikita yung Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation kasi palagi niya pinakikita sa amin yung 3.5 billion na nasa budget, di ba? Pero meron siyang additional dyan. Would you say na minimum yan, 500 million a year? Ganon? 5% ka ng 2 billion
Hindi po kasi exactly 2 billion po ang nako-collect na penalty ng BSP.
Yun ang sabi nila Yun ang sabi nila. So you give us a report. And please, yung sabihin mo din doon sa Philippine Crop Insurance, kasi pareho kayo na share 45%. Give us a report. If you started in 2008, give us a report of what you have received from this Agri-Agra law penalty since 2008 and how it is divided by year, di ba?
Sige
para
po,
makita natin yung 4.8 na sinasabi mo kung saan ang galing yon, di ba?
Gagawa po kami ng breakdown ng 4.6 billion.
Saka sabihin mo na rin sa Philippine Crop Insurance kasi dapat pareho kayo di ba? Pareho kayong 45%
Opo, dapat po ganun.
According sa batas, di ba?
Yes po, dapat po ganun.
Pagka siya pumupunta sa amin, palagi niya sinasabi yung kanyang 3.5 billion na subsidy. Bakit nasaan yung nanggagaling dito sa sa penalties?
Yan ang dapat i-report din
kaya nga, dapat tanungin natin, di ba? Para naintindihan natin. Kasi kung hindi nyo i-report, di tatanggalin na namin kayo sa amin. Di ba? You have to justify what you are receiving and what you are doing with it. Di ba? Otherwise, you don't deserve to be there. Di ba?
Opo, kaya po pinakikita namin yung kung
Kaya
magkano
nga,
yung total seed fund as of today.
Oo,
Yes po.
ipakita mo yung buong suma. Oo.
Opo, yung pong breakdown ng 4.6 billion na penalty, ipapakita po namin. Yes po.
Oo, para alam namin ano yung yearly na binibigay sa inyo at saan napupunta yon, di ba? Para ma-justify natin kung itutuloy pa natin yon, di ba?
Yun nga pong penalty for 2018 and 2019, hinihintay pa po namin. Kung
So
i-review
wala pa
ng
yun?
BSP. Wala pa rin po. 2017 po yung huli.
Ba't ganun?
At ang tagal naman.
Ang tagal naman doon.
May process po yata ang BSP bago sila makakolect.
Oh, but not, 2017, that is 18, 19, 20, 3 years. Sobra naman tagal na process noon. Di ba? Dapat,
Madam Chair, yung isa pang tanong kasi dyan, sino yung nagdi-discarte dyan? Who decides? Kasi parang walang agricultural sector sa field guarantee.
So we ask
Paano nila
BSP.
nalalaman kung paano i-disburse yan?
Oo.
Opo,
So we ask BSP who is disbursing this subsidy to PCIC and field guarantee at naman saan dadalhin, di ba? But dapat kaya lang nagtataka ako, hindi to nire-report ng PCIC, di ba? Palagi nakikita ko yung 3.5 billion, di ba? Wala silang sinasabing ganito. Di ba?
Malaki na rin eh.
Oo, minimum yan 500, di ba? Kasi sabi nila tentative 2 billion. Ipagpalagay ng bumaba sa 2 billion, minimum yan 500 million silang dalawa. Tinigdag pa 500 million sila, di ba? Minimum yan, maliit na nga yun eh.
Opo, at actually po based on records po may mga year na wala pong remittance talaga.
Why?
Paano
So
yun?
mas magandang po nga na Opo, kaya po mas maganda nga
Can we request the BSP for breakdown to see if they match? Because
At
it's
sino ang tatawagan natin sa BSP para malaman to? Sino in charge sa BSP?
sa CLIA po,
Ano ibig sabihin ng CLIA?
CLIA.
Ano nga ibig sabihin noon?
Maybe BSP can
Okay, can we hear
Ma'am, if
from
I may
BSP?
po.
Oo.
Yes po, ma'am. Ma'am, will we take note po of this instruction and we will provide the report?
Ano ibig sabihin ng CLIA?
Center for Learning and Inclusion and Advocacy. Pero ma'am, hindi po sa kanila binibigay yung penalty. Sa financial supervision sector po.
Kanino nga? Kanino? Hindi CLIA.
Ang susulatan po ma'am, yes ma'am, sa Deputy Governor Chuchi Fonasher, Financial Supervision Sector ma'am.
Fonasher.
Financial Supervision Sector.
Financial. Mag-report kayo.
Yes,
through
ma'am.
the years. Dapat every year mag-report kayo.
We'll do that po, ma'am.
Para alam namin. Kasi yung PCIC, wala siyang nire-report na nakakatanggap sa inyo. Palaging nakikita ko doon sa kanyang computation, yung 3.5 billion na binibigay ng budget. Pero wala siyang sinasabing ganyan. Oo. Kasi
We'll do that po, ma'am.
kung hindi naman nila ire-report, edi tanggalin na natin sila sa beneficiary. Diba? Dapat naman may mapakinabang tayo sa kanila pumupunta malaki diba? So, you make a report, Iha, para maintindihan namin kung ano binigay nyo, tapos hihingi kami ng report sa kanilang dalawa kung yung binigay nyo tumama doon sa ni-report nila, di ba?
We will submit to the committee po, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So, wala ka nang sasabihin, field guarantee?
Ma'am, to continue po.
Bigay mo na lang sa akin yung yung report mo.
Sige po. Pwede po i-submit na lang namin. In fact, we submitted already to the secretariat po yung PowerPoint.
Wala naman binibigay sa akin eh.
Yeah.
Tapos sabihin mo doon sa PCIC, mag-submit din sila. Kasi kayong dalawang beneficiary, dapat makita namin kung yung binigay ng central bank, nakuha nyo. At saan nyo ginamit, di ba? Oo. Okay? Kasi dinidecide natin kung saan natin dadalhin itong penalties na to better make sure na dinala nyo sa mabuti. Anyway, anyway, so yung pa. Tapos, gusto kong pakinggan yung Chamber of Thrift Banks. Nandito sila eh. Oo. Yung mga hindi nyo nasabi, gumawa na lang kayo ng report. Chamber of Thrift Banks. Ayan na si Suzette.
Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. I think Paquito had to beg off.
Yeah.
So I'll
Tagal
just...
namin no? Dami-daming resource person eh. Ganyan ang hearing namin eh. From 10 to 3 yata o 10 to 4.
Yeah.
Wala nang kainan ng lunch eh. Di ba, Amy kahapon? Anong oras ka natapos, Amy kahapon?
Ay, naku, 3 o'clock din.
Oo, ganyan eh. Pag ganito, hindi na kami kumakain ng lunch. Nagmimerienda na lang along the way.
Masyadong masipag.
Sige.
Actually, yes. We thank you, Madam Chair. As I said, it's nice to see you again. And then Senator Marcos, Senator Binay, and other members of the committee. We thank you for inviting us and to this hearing. And basically, we support the various measures that have been copies of which were provided to us, especially the your bill also, Senator Villar, expanding the list of activities that may be financed through banks to broaden the existing modes of alternative compliance. This is really necessary for the banks to comply. No, although some there are thrift banks still that directly lend to agriculture, but I think the numbers are the numbers will really. They're quite obvious that we are having difficulty also complying.
Can you give us a report on how you comply para alam namin kung saan kayo nagkakaroon? Sa Agra ba rin ang difficulty nyo?
Basically Agra po. I think that kasi the problems, well, you've also, I think that was also discussed earlier here, and ever since from several years ago that I've been in CTB, that has always been the problem of the banks, more on the Agra.
And so you think that if we consolidate yung 25 na you can choose between kahit na saan mo dalhin, Agri or Agra, mas better yon kaysa yung 10-15.
Yes, well, we welcome that, and we also welcome the fact that you are expanding the list of alternative compliance.
That's di ba nag ang BSP na nag-expand na sila no March 3, di ba?
Yes, we welcome that po.
And we have to expand because the model now of agriculture today is very much different than in 2009, di ba?
That's right. That's right.
So dapat, logistics is very important now. Than before kasi na-produce mo nga, hindi mo naman madala sa market, ano naman mangyayari doon, di ba?
Totoo po yun. That's why we support your proposals, and then especially the consolidation of the loan allocation. Just just a concern on a provision in the bill of Senator Aimee with regard to the increase in the computation of the loan.
Obvious naman, magpo-complain kayo doon.
Kung pwede, maybe you know your bill nga is I think it's acceptable what you wrote in your bill to leave it as is, and then it's up to the monetary board to give leeway also to the BSP monetary board to prescribe otherwise when necessary. Otherwise, we support the measures, and we thank you po. I know you really have been very sincere in your mission as far as Agri is concerned. You were very clear to us before when you were our guest in our general membership meeting. Natatandaan po namin yon, and we support you. We will continue to support you po. Thank you.
We just want to amend the bill that it will be acceptable and then you don't have to pay so much penalties. Siyempre gusto namin magamit nyo yung loan na yung 25% as much as possible. Kaya nga naghahanap tayo ng way para magamit yon kasi pangit yung penalty.
Opo.
Hindi ako natutuwa doon sa penalty. And besides, where they are going to bring the penalty, in my other agricultural bills, in-answer na yun eh. I created farm schools all over the Philippines. At lahat ng bill na pinasa ko, may pera para magbayad ng scholarship sa farm schools. Siguro ang role nyo lang eh, gumawa ng module for finance. Kasi I don't think yung mga ATI magaling dyan eh. Kayong mga bangko ang magaling dyan. And then you simplify the requirement na dapat makita nyo talaga yung profile ng mga farmer na they cannot really fulfill yung difficult requirements kasi hindi naman sila ganun ka-sophisticated, di ba? Oo. And maybe your requirement you can give us and maybe make a module para ituturo namin sa farm school how to be able to fulfill those requirements for loan. Kasi pwede naman ituro yun eh. Oo. Ang dami-dami naman farm school. We have 2,000 farm schools all over the Philippines. We have one farm school in every town in the Philippines. Oo.
Very laudable.
Oo. So, wala kaming problema sa pagtuturo. Kailangan lang yung ituturo, mapakinabangan nila. Di ba? So, I guess what your association can do would be to make a module.
Okay.
Na turuan how to borrow. 'Di ba? Oh, kasi hindi naman sila marunong doon eh. Hindi sila marunong. Ako, if I am a farmer at ganun ang background ko, I don't think I would know how to borrow.
That's true.
Oh, so maybe you can give us a module and we will give it to TESDA and ATI para ituro sa aming mga farm schools.
Okay. I will discuss po with myself.
Maybe yun ang CSR nyo. Oo.
Sige po.
Module. Kasi, ang maganda yung paggawa mo ng module na gano'n, tinuruan mo na yung farmer makabaro, kumita ka pa kasi matututo sila magbaro sa inyo na hindi mahirap para sa inyo, di ba? Oh, it's two-way. It's two-way. Natulungan ng farmer, natulungan din kayo to make money, di ba?
That's a good suggestion po. We will
So maybe you can discuss it with the Chamber of Thrift Banks and the rural banks and the Bankers Association of the Philippines. Pero siguro kayong mas malilit na bangko, mas kilala nyo yung farmer. Eh. Kasi I don't think yung mga Bankers Association of the Philippines, malalaki sila, sanay sila sa malalaking customer. Eh, di ba? So, kayo ang dapat nakakaalam noon kasi minsan familiarity with the market din eh, di ba?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
We will work on this, ma'am.
Sige, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Hindi ka tumatanda ha.
Salamat po. kayo din po.
Hindi, kasama ko siya. Ano yun? 20 years ago?
Tagal na, 20 years ago.
30 years ago. 30 years ago.
You are our president, I think. Di ba? You became president pa nga of the association.
Correct.
Hindi, nagmamanage ako ng ng bangko development bank, kaya kasama ko sila, masaya kami noon.
From even from the start, very good na siya talaga. Up to now.
Ang daming problema. Problematic talaga tong ating buhay sa Pilipinas.
That's true.
Both in government and in private sector. So, hindi tayo dapat malulungkot na may mga problema tayo. It's a way of life.
Challenge po. Thank
It's
you,
a way of life. Sige, okay. So, yung rural bank ba, they will talk and the co-ops? Yung rural bank and co-ops.
Yes, Madam Chair, good afternoon. Yes,
Ikaw
Madam
ba?
Chair.
Okay, sige, go ahead.
I thank you for the initiative and we support your bills, Madam Chair. We'll also submit our formal position paper and would like to I'd like to express sana, Madam Chair, based on that discussion a while ago, some of our concerns. With Agri-Agra naman po, we are complying naman. BSP knows that the industry, we are there, we are really helping out farmers, mga small farmers talaga in different provinces and in areas that nobody reaches them. Yun lang, Madam Chair, we have concerns doon sa fuel guarantee because matagal po masyado yung bayad sa claims and konti lang po kasi talaga yung alam mo, Madam Chair, yung maliliit lang kasi
Pati PCIC, ganyan yan. Oo. Ako, talagang ang something against them is ang bagal nila. Oo. Kasi siyempre, pag ikaw tinamaan ng ano, di ba, tinamaan ka ng calamity. Siyempre, ang gusto mo, makuha mo yung pera, di ba? Tapos patay na yung kukuha ng pera, hindi pa dumadating yung pera. Di ba? Kaya nga sana yung PCIC, ang desire ko dyan, ano yan mayroong private counterpart, di ba? Para maging efficient. Kasi minsan, pag nag-iisa ka, wala kang counterpart, you tend to take your time. Walang competition Oo. I was trying then to privatize ang crop insurance para itong PCIC makaranas ng may competition para bumilis-bilis ang trabaho. Ganun rin pala itong field guarantee kasi I've never worked with field guarantee before. So sa PCIC ako palaging kasi itong PCIC may budget to every year kaya we always see him every year. Anyway, so yun din ang inyong complaint. What else?
Kasi yun po, maliit masyado yung mga kapital ng rural bank. So pag tinamaan talaga ng bagyo, once sa isang taon, 3 times yung average of that. Hirap na hirap po talaga. So kahit gustuhin man namin continue na ma-roll out yun or ma-extend pa uli, lalo na pag natamaan yung
Saan ang rural bank mo, Iha?
Dito sa Davao po, sa Davao Region.
Saan ka Davao Region? Anong probinsya?
Sa Davao City, ma'am.
Davao City. Yeah.
So, another thing, ma'am, is yung sa crop insurance, baka pwede namang i-expand nila yung coverage, ma'am. Kasi parang puro rice, corn, mga ganon. But we also want to explore some ma'am, other crops. Like, kunyari, ang lugar, ma'am, hindi siya viable for rice farming.
Kayo kakao, di ba?
Oo, dapat
binabagay sa lugar. Tama.
Ma'am, we also asked that from DA, ma'am, na kung pwede, merong matching sa isang lugar per region. Ano ba ang pwedeng, based doon sa soil analysis, based doon sa geographical at saka sa climate na historical database, ano ba to, nababahaan ba to palagi or hindi? Tapos ano yung crop na mag-fit? Hindi natin ipipilit
Alam nila yon. Hindi lang nila itinuturo. Obvious naman Pag tiningnan mo, may mga lugar na very good talaga. Like for example, Catanduanes, talagang abaka sila. They produce yung isang bayan sa Batangas, egg sila. Kayo, kakao talaga kayo. You produce 80% of the cacao in the Philippines. I mean, it's so obvious. Kaya lang, hindi nila dinidiscuss thoroughly sa mga tao di ba? So doon nagkukulang. Kasi tingin ko, kaya kayo magaling sa cacao. Kasi talaga yung soil nyo at ang weather nyo, bagay sa cacao. Kasi tabi kayo ng Indonesia, pareho kayo ng Indonesia, ang lakas sa cacao. So, ibig sabihin, may natural kayo. Like, for example, yung Nueva Ecija, magagaling sa rice, Pangasinan, Nueva Ecija, Isabela, Ilocos Region, tapos yung Iloilo, North Cotabato, Bukidnon. Meron talagang specialization sila na yun ang major crop nila So it's common knowledge. Kaya lang ako, alam ko kasi I've been with agriculture for 8 years. Pero yung nasa DA, alam nila yan. Kung sino yung like kayo, known kayo sa banana, di ba? Davao del Norte.
Yes. So actually, speaking of that as well, ma'am, yung last na lang is that I think you mentioned a while ago about logistics. Right. Mas mabilis for us to send bananas to China, to Japan. Pero ma'am, ang mahal po pag pinadala namin sa Manila because ita-tracking yun, ma'am. And alam mo ba, ma'am, kung saan nagba-bottleneck? Doon sa mga port. Sa mga port.
Nagtatracking kayo, hindi kayo nagbo-boat.
Konti lang yung nagbo-boat doon for domestic.
Alam boat di ba? Ako kasi alam ko yan kasi nagpapadala ako ng mga calamity assistance sa mga sa mga probinsya. Alam ko na mas mura ang tracking kaysa boat. Mahal talaga ang boat. My
Kaya
God.
lang mga tracking, it will take a number of days kasi nga, 'di ba inter-island tayo. So pag Mindanao to Visayas, dadaan yan, magro-roro yan.
Oo,
Pero
tama.
doon sa Sorsogon, I think sa Matnog, something yan, 3 lang yung barge doon. So ilang tracking yun ang pumipila doon, tagpa 500, 400.
Ba't hindi maglagay ng barge doon?
Kaya din sana ma'am yung request kung pwede makita yun ng gobyerno ma'am. Kasi ang hirap, ang daming product sa Mindanao ma'am na nahihirapan kaming i-transport to Visayas and to Luzon. And kung napapatransport namin, nabubulok na yung mga fruits.
Yan, maganda yan. Yan logistics na yan, shipping, ilagay sa Agri-Agra. Diba?
Tapos ilagay sa Agri-Agra po, yung domestic shipping at
Isama
na po
sa
problema
value
namin eh.
Yes,
Kasi dumadaan po ng Leyte yan, di ba, yung Matnog?
Oo, tama, Matnog.
Ang hirap!
Ang hirap po, ang hirap
Pero
po. So
ako, mas gusto ko naman sa truck kasi mura. Ang mahal naman sa ship, ang mahal sa eroplano. Oo.
Mahal naman kasi sa ship kasi miski yung Davao Port, walang crane. Lahat sila walang crane. Ano ba yan?
Kaya nga dapat ilagay natin sa Agri-Agra. Logistics, yung shipping. Oo. Kasi kaya yung pork, hindi ba, hindi makarating sa Manila. Oversupply sila sa Mindanao and Visayas. Hindi makarating sa Manila, walang walang transport.
Correct.
Ang mahal ng transport.
Sa tracking din, which is mura, tapos nabubulok siya kasi ilang araw nakikita yung truck bago sila maka-cross doon sa island.
Buti na lang ako, pinadadala ko, hindi nabubulok.
Siguro alam nilang sa'yo, ma'am. Anyway, so that would be all, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Isulat mo yung mga position nyo, yung mga para matandaan namin pag finalize namin ng version, ha? Oo.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam
Kasi
Chair.
itong mga trip bank at saka mga rural bank ang mas may contact sa mga farmer kasi mas maliliit to nandun sila sa lugar ng mga farmers.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Sige. So, who else ang co-op, yung mga co-op magsasalita? Tawagin natin.
Hello po. Wait po.
Cooperatives.
Yeah, opo. Magandang umaga po, Senator and the rest of the members of the committee. Kami po sa Cooperative Bank, we are really in support po. Natutuwa naman po kami dun po sa mga initiatives na ginagawa po ninyo. Tama po kayo, kami po ang mga directly na in connection po with the farmers po. So, doon naman, yung iniintay po ng isang co-op bank namin right now, for example, yung Metro South Cooperative Bank, ayun na lamang po approval from the BSP o participations namin doon sa field guarantee. Anyway, nung una, nag-question kami why we are not included, pero mukha namang nag-response na po positively ang BSP na kasama.
Dapat. Oo.
Yes po. So far po ay may mga requirements na lang po na pinapasend po sa amin, pero hoping po na ma-include po talaga ang cooperative bank. Ang isang problema po ng cooperative bank kasi po, Madam Senator, ay palaging lang parang ang category sa amin ay palaging parang as part lang ng rural bank. Cooperative bank is really a cooperative bank na ito nga po yung sinusulong namin po, by the way, so far na Co-op Banking Act, na talagang para lang po talaga sa cooperative bank. Kasi parang gusto namin magkalaga po ng identity kami as cooperative bank. Na cooperative
Ilan ba cooperative bank sa Pilipinas?
Right now po ay nasa na po kami sa 23.
23. Can you give me a list of this bank and where they are, di ba? Kasi alam ko yung malalaking cooperative but I don't know the cooperative bank. Oo.
Nako, tandaan yan dati, kaso ang daming nagbangkarote.
Bakit?
Ay, naku, mahabang drama yan.
Ba't hindi mo ikwento para alam natin ang difficulty?
Well, honestly po, ang isang concern po talaga namin, ma'am, ay doon po, medyo marami pong mga restrictions po pagdating sa pagkuha ng mga capitalizations, etc. Una po ay the dossier issue. Doon sa dossier issue na gusto namin pong ilapa, dapat kasi iba po kasi yung, kami po kasi, ang kinikita po namin po ay mga miyembro po talaga. Tapos pagdating sa
Cannot function talaga under BSP rules. Kasi co-op bank lang siya. Tapos yung mga members, sila talaga yung mga co-op members ang may-ari ng bangko. Lahat sila dosri.
Yeah, correct po. Correct
Hindi ba allowed? Hindi ba allowed naman ng dosri talaga? Basta to a limited percentage, 'di ba?
Kaso dun sa co-op bank, sila rin mismo yung may-ari.
Hindi, talagang pwede naman mag-dosri ang may-ari. Basta you follow the rules ng dosri. Oo.
Mahirap i-follow yung rules kasi yung nature of the co-op bank is precisely cooperative ownership din.
Yeah, correct po.
I-explain mo yun sa akin, ha? Sumulat ka sa akin, explain mo. Para naintindihan ko.
Things like conducting business outside of the bank premises na talagang imposible para sa co-op bank, mangongolekta dapat sa bukid. Yung mga ganon.
Bakit? Bawal yun?
Bawal po. Dapat conducted within the bank premises.
Di ba sinasabi nga nila, yun ang weakness ng mga bank, walang relationship sa mga customer. Kaya nga, nagpa 5-6 yung mga customer nila.
Kasi yung mga 5-6 masipag, umikot ng umikot, sinusugod sila
di dapat yung maliliit na bangko, ganun din. Di ba dapat maliliit na bangko, ganun din?
Not allowed po.
Ay, sus Maria.
Oh, yun po.
Lagi namin pinag-uusapan yan dito kasi hindi nga pwede within banking hours, within the bank premises, yung mga ganun.
So talo kayo ng 5-6.
Talo talaga. 2 beses mag-collect araw at gabi.
Bakit? Hindi ba dapat ang challenge is talunin ng 5-6, di ba? Bakit hindi tulungan na talunin ng 5-6?
But they're hamstrung by all sorts of regulations that are not really relevant sa maliliit na rural, thrift, savings and loan, at pati lalo na yung co-op bank, imposible.
May magagawa ba tayo dyan, Amy, pagsulat natin ng Agri-Agra?
Siguro pwede natin ilagay po yun. Kasi talagang unworkable. Never ka makakatalo ng 5-6. Rampa lang rampa yun, araw at gabi.
Dapat i-try natin.
Opo.
I-try natin.
Na-exempt sila.
There's no such thing as hindi pwede. Diba? Kawawa kasi yun, pa 5-6 ang mahal. Diba?
Pag ikaw ay kolekta, piso-piso.
Pag ikaw nag 5-6, hindi ka nakikita. Ang mahal na interest Yun na lang ang kita mo Diba? Kawawa.
Super kawawa.
Kawawa yun kasi tayo, pag nag 10% nga, mabigat na Diba? Ito ilang percento? 100 ba to? 20% a month yata diba?
More, I think.
More 20% a month, di 240% a year na yun. Diba?
Wow.
Sino makikita ng 240% a year? Sus Maria.
Ngayon pa.
Kami ang GP namin, malaki na yung 20
Super.
Meron pang admin pa yon. So pag tanggal ng admin, 5 na lang. Yung admin at marketing, di ba? So, yun. Sige, we'll try to think of something. Kaya kami nag-i-interview para we can make our bill more creative. Okay, gusto daw ng Microfinance Council magsalita. Tawagin natin yung
Ma'am, sana po ay makonsider po talaga yung uniqueness ng cooperative bank.
Isulat mo, Iho, ha? Magpadala ka sa akin ng sulat, ibida mo, ha? Kahit anong form, basta matandaan ko lang para pagawa namin ng final committee report, makonsider namin, ha?
Apo.
Kasi kayo
ASF issue naman po, affected din naman po yung mga members po na dun po sa
yung ASF.
Opo.
Lahat naman affected ng ASF na yun
Lalo na po yung mga agri-co-ops.
Yeah. Pero gagawa ako ng ng livelihood, livestock, poultry and dairy bill anuhin ko yung, itatackle ko yung disease control na yan. Kasi napabayaan yan eh. Parang wala sa priority. Ilan na tayo? Taon-taon na lang. Pagkatapos ng avian flu, ASF, dati yung coconut. Ano ba yun? Yung sa coconut. Ngayon may mango na naman.
Kokolisa, mango, sisid. Ano ba?
Yung kokolisip ko hindi bumagyo, hindi umalis yun eh. Nadala lang yata ng bagyo.
Natatangay na lang Yolanda. Ano ba yun?
Hindi man nagkamot yun eh. Natagay ng bagyo.
Grabe, no?
Biglang nawala nung bumagyo eh. Oo. Itong ASF, hindi yata matangay ng bagyo to. Grabe.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Binay.
Microfinance, yung mga
Yeah.
microfinance for agri, nakaka-avail sa SB Corp?
Magsasalita sila ngayon eh. Tatawagin ko na sila, Senator Nancy. Pagsalitain mo na yung microfinance. Ano ba to? Ba't
Sige po, good afternoon po, Madam Chair, Senator Villar,
Yes.
Si
Ano ba
Alan
to?
Sigat po ito, Executive Director of the Microfinance Council of the Philippines. So we support the different provisions of the draft bills, including the Agribusiness Management Capacity and Institution Building Fund and Program.
Manong, yung microfinance ba, private o government?
Private po,
Okay.
mga miyembro po na microfinance institutions, mga microfinance NGOs, ay private non-government organizations po, Senator. Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. We also support the continuous provision of crop insurance by the PCIC and guarantee by the Philippine Guarantee Corporation. Although we share the same comments dun sa RBAP na sana mas mabilis ang processing ng PCIC and lawakan yung coverage ng crops nila. And then while microfinance NGOs are not mandated to comply with the mandatory agriculture and fisheries financing requirement under the Agri-Agra law, it is estimated that around 15 to 20% of the 6.7 million clients of microfinance NGOs are engaged in agriculture and fisheries. In order for the microfinance NGOs to continue providing financial services to our farmers and fisheries, we would like to request the committee to consider developing a dedicated loan guarantee program for microfinance institutions or for field guarantee to clearly define that microfinance NGOs can avail the guarantee program. This initiative will encourage private commercial banks and other commercial lenders to extend wholesale loans to microfinance institutions with the presence of a guarantee mechanism, thus infusing more liquidity for microfinance NGOs to reinforce credit flow in a responsible way and appropriate to the requirements of the microfinance members or clients, including farmers. So yun lang po.
Can you, ano ba to? Ba't ganito to? Meron bang kailangan magpatay? Nag-e-echo eh. Anyway, can you give us a list of the microfinance institution na NGO?
Yes, ma'am. We can provide you the
Para malaman natin kung sila. And then you give us addresses para titingnan namin kung mailalagay namin sa bill na makasama. Ano ba to? Nagloko na tayo. Ano ba yan? Hindi na ako makasalita, nag-e-echo na eh.
Hala, sinukuha na tayo ng internet.
Anyway, after microfinance, bigay mo na lang yung report mo ha, yung listahan nyo para we will consider kung ma-include namin kayo sa Agri-Agra. Pagkatapos nila, sino pa ang hindi nakakapagsalita? As
Permission to speak, Honorable.
Madam
Yes.
Chair? Question lang din sa
Ano?
yung sa microfinance group po, kung nakaka-avail sila sa SB Corp.
Hindi nga daw eh. Nagpapa-accredit pa sila eh. Oo. Kaya nga sabi ko bigay nila yung listahan nila kung sino sila. Kasi mga NGO daw to eh. Titingnan natin kung pwede natin isama sa law na ma-accredit sila. Oh.
Kasi Madam Chair,
Kailangan po nga isama sila kasi unregulated. Yung ibang 5-6 nagpapanggap NGO.
Ah, ganon. So, dapat isali para ma-regulate. Oh, okay. Sige. Okay.
Madam
So,
Chair,
you give us a list.
question of Senator.
Ano?
Pwede po mag-respond doon sa question ni Senator Binay. Kasi may question po siya dun sa kung nakaka-avail yung microfinance NGO sa SB Corp. Yes po, they are able to avail of the SB Corp pantawid ay yung 3-piece program po ng SB Corp. And yung ano po Madam Chair, yung microfinance methodology po kasi hindi siya angkop dun sa regular agricultural methodology of financing. So hindi po namin nire-request na makasama yung microfinance NGOs dun sa Agri-Agra law. Although ginagawa po ng mga microfinance institutions yan dahil iba po yung methodology ng microfinance institutions, weekly payment po. So hindi po siya angkop dun sa agricultural na pautang kasi nga po lump sum po dahil nga seasonal po yung bayad, yung kita ng mga farmers and fishermen. So ang nire-request lang po namin ay yung guarantee mechanism na napag-usapan na po previously.
You better state what you want in your position paper so we will know what to do with you. Diba? Kasi ayaw mo naman sumali sa Agri-Agra, gusto mo lang mag-avail ng field guarantee. Diba? Tama ba yun?
Yes, ma'am.
So, saan ang gagaling ang pera niyong pinautang?
Ano po, currently po sa commercial banks, meron po mga commercial banks na may wholesale loans. Meron din po sa land bank, sa SB Corp, meron din po.
So, ba't ayaw niyo sa Agri-Agra?
Methodology ng microfinance na weekly, kasi yung mga clients po ng microfinance, yung may mga daily or weekly na income.
Pwede sa inyo nagbabayad ng daily or weekly, pero dun sa Agri-Agra, pwede kayong magbayad ng ng standard, di ba? Wala namang, that will not prevent you. Anyway, maglagay na lang kayo ng position paper. Sino pa ang gusto magsalita? Attorney Philip. Sino pa gusto magsalita? Attorney Philip? Nasaan na? Nawala na. Attorney Philip, sino pa magsasalita sa listahan?
Ng KMP.
Si Congressman. Okay.
Opo.
We recognize yung ano pangalan? Sa magbubukid ng Pilipinas. Oo. si Congressman. Okay. We recognize the Samahang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas. Di ba? Magsamahang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas. Okay. Pwede na magsalita. Pwede na, we recognize Congressman.
Madam Chair.
Congressman Mariano. Okay.
Madam Chair, pasensya na po, umalis na raw po.
Umalis na. Okay.
In which case, Madam Chair, pwede na tayo mag-end ng hearing.
Okay. So we have...
Madam Chair, can we be recognized from DAR?
Yeah. Ikaw yung hindi maintindihan kanina. So, naintindihan ka na ngayon. Okay, go ahead.
Salamat po. That was Yusek Emily Padilla, ma'am, from Nueva Ecija.
Yes.
Sorry po. So, DAR po is fully supporting our effort to enhance the Agri-Agra law as amended stipulated in relation to the 9 bills related to financing of agriculture, fisheries and agrarian reform and rural development po. It's time to manifest po na we'll be submitting a position paper in due time within this week, probably Friday, so that we can fully manifest our positions on the issues at hand, namely the compliance issue, cooperative development, the penalty issue, yung pong creditworthiness of the ARBs, capacity building issue, and setting up of the council, financial and capacity development building. So mag-submit po kami ng position paper on these issues not later than Friday, Honorable Senator.
So, thank you. And I want to inform you that talagang ang malaking problema ng Agri-Agra is Agra. Oo. Kasi based on our findings, talagang sa mga agricultural land reform beneficiaries, walang masyadong co-op. Kaya walang, tapos collective CLOA kayo. The only kailangan mag-form ng co-op yung may-ari ng collective CLOA kasi wala silang personality para mag-avail sila ng loan kung hindi co-op, di ba? Kasi ang kanilang land holding is collective CLOA. Although we hope na mai-individualize yan in the future to the split program, pero matagal pa yun. So I guess wala namang masamang mag-form kayo ng co-op kasi that is a very good model by which you can manage kasi kung individually mo i-manage yung farm ng mga land reform beneficiary, walang economies of scale. Kailangan magsama-sama sila para magkaroon ng economies of scale. At saka yung mga things na pinamimigay ng mga batas na ginawa namin like ng Coco Bill at saka nung Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund at saka nung SIDA Law, lahat yun through co-op. Hindi pwede pamigay sa individuals yung mechanization. Kasi yung makina hindi pwedeng ibigay sa iisang tao kasi mahal yon. Dapat paghatian ng mas maraming tao. Oo, para gagamitin nila lahat yon. Sharing of machines. So, importante sa inyo na mag-organize kayo ng co-op. Yun ang failure ng DAR. You've been in existence for 50 years. Napansin namin doon sa mga lugar na mga maraming land reform beneficiaries, doon walang co-op. Parang hindi nila naging model yung magtayo sila ng co-op. Kaya yun ang weakness ng sana bigyan ng focus ng Darian na na matayuan ng co-op. Marami kaming budget for building of co-op like maraming land reform beneficiaries sa coconut And there is a budget in the Coco Bill given to the Cooperative Development Authority to organize co-op in the coconut industry. So sana gawin natin yun. Sabihin mo kay Secretary Castriciones para maka-avail sila. That's the only way they can avail of the benefit of mechanization to form co-op. Kasi sa co-op, ibibigay, hindi pwede sa individual kasi mahal ang isang makina. Hindi naman entitled ang bawat tao sa isang makina. They have to share it. So,
yes po, Your Honor.
So, yun lang ang gusto kong sabihin sa DAR and kasi yun ang pinakamalaking problema. Kaya yung Agra 1% lang out of 10% ang naa-avail. Walang personality to avail of the loan yung ating mga land reform beneficiaries. So with that,
Madam Chair?
Yes, Amy. Okay.
Sorry, one last hirit lang po. In the chairwoman's effort to widen the Agri-Agra financing and its effort towards inclusivity to make it easier to apply and to qualify, so that we broaden the coverage of projects to include green projects, digital projects, and even health in our aging farmers projects by way of investment. I just wanted to mention one last thing po, if we can adjust also the banking year and adapt to the planting calendars, kasi doon rin tayo natatalo sa koleksyon kasi nagastos na by the time na natapos yung financial year. So I don't know if it's possible to adjust also na mangolekta pag-ani kagad para habulin natin yung 5-6, nauuna sila lagi. Thank you.
Oo, sige. Magte-technical working group naman ito eh. Kaya sana, Amy, yung mga input mo, ilista mo para siguraduhin natin maipasok natin sa bill.
Maraming salamat para
hindi
natin ng konti.
Oo. Talagang kailangan hanapin natin yung problema eh. So with that, lahat na halos ng mga naandito nakapagsalita na i-suspend lang natin ang hearing in case we would need another hearing. So we are suspending the hearing at sana yung mga resource person, bigay nyo sa amin in writing yung mga position nyo para maisama namin sa magkakaroon ng technical working group to consolidate all the bills and all the opinions and suggestion in this hearing para gumawa ng committee report. So yun lang. Maraming salamat. God bless and stay safe. Okay, thank you.
Happy birthday, Nancy. Ginutom tayo.
Nawala na si Nancy eh.
Wala